When he first wakes to a bone-chilling cold, a cold that has nothing to do with the weather, and everything to do with the fact that the body he is in has stopped breathing. Somewhere far above him, a desperate man is screaming with a cracking voice. A little girl is wailing, her tiny voice filled with absolute terror. Meanwhile, hands press rhythmically against a small chest, desperate to revive a heart. He drifts in that deep, suffocating darkness for a long time. Then a totally different set of memories begins to push through the dark. Memories of a past life from a completely different world. He remembers crossing a street, heading to register at Jinling University when things went sideways. A massive truck rounded the corner faster than anything that heavy should ever move. The last thing he saw was a giant metal grill and a flash of bright orange. Is he dead? He asked himself dryly, feeling absolutely zero surprise. That runaway truck hit him at nearly 80 kilometers an hour. No one survives that. He looks back on his short life, realizing how easy it is to summarize. An orphan taken in by a couple who were kind to him, at least until they had their own biological son. Suddenly, he was just another mouth to feed. Never abused or abandoned, just quietly erased from the family dynamics. He did not hate them, they kept him fed and clothed after all. They paid for his school, and he repaid them with endless hard work. He graduated top of his class year after year, studying like his life depended on it. Academically, he scored third highest in the entire county on his college exams. Admitted to Jinling University, his ultimate dream was finally within reach, but then a runaway truck took everything. He feels regret, but also a strange sense of relief. There was truly no one in the world who would actually mourn his passing. Just an empty chair at a holiday table, he possessed nothing worth losing. But just when he accepts his tragic end, wait, things get weird. Voices both familiar and utterly foreign start tugging at his non-existent heartstrings. The constant buzzing in his ears slowly fades, replaced by desperate cries. He hears a man crying out for Gallant, begging his child to quickly wake up. A little girl screams in terror that her beloved brother is abandoning her. Desperate hands shake him violently, pressing hard against his cold chest. He feels a burning, heavy pressure of salt water choking his lungs. Trying to speak, he only ends up coughing up a massive wave of seawater. The cold reality of the world floods back in with that agonizing gasp. He feels the heavy wool cloak, smells the salty brine, and slowly opens his eyes. Around him, long-haired men in dark cloaks kneel with pure, intense anxiety. Grief and sudden joy war intensely across their weathered, unfamiliar faces. He sees rocky beaches and the massive tide that almost claimed his life. A nobleman in a heavy cloak pulls him close, weeping onto his damp hair. Nearby, a little blonde girl, barely 4 years old, desperately clings to him. She weeps uncontrollably, burying her small, tear-stained face into his wet woolen sleeve. Suddenly, like a violent crashing wave, a second set of foreign memories floods his mind. They settle deep within him, completely rewriting his understanding of this world. These are the memories of Gallant Tarth, the eldest son of House Tarth, an 8-year-old heir to Evenfall Hall on the remote island of Tarth. Fisher boys spoke of a faint cyan, an orange shimmer in a sea cave at morns. Point where a proud, reckless boy dived deep into the rising waters. In pursuit of a legendary sword, he has transmigrated and the realization lands. Quietly, without any of the dramatic noise you would expect from rebirth. This is Westeros, the Stormlands, House Tarth, the brutal world of game. Of Thrones, a story he loved back on Earth, reading the books cover to cover. After finishing the show, a world of dragons, Essos, ashy and uncharted. Lands beyond, right now, a small blonde girl clutches his arm with her. Freckles, her sturdy little frame, and bright sapphire eyes. This is Brienne. Brienne the Beauty, the future only female knight in the entire 7 kingdoms. In the books, she only mentioned once that her brother, 4 years older, had drowned when she was just 4. That brother was Gallantarth. That brother is him. He should be in shock, but instead, he feels something close to relief. Back on Earth, he was a total nobody. Here, he is the heir to an island, the son of an earl, and older brother to Westeros's most honorable soul. This new young body finally settles. His consciousness slowly begins to knit these memories together, fading his past life into a distant dream. Now he can recall every single thing Gallant experienced since his birth. In this dangerous new fantasy world, he is only 8 years old but alive. Suddenly, his father is crushing the breath out of him with fierce relief. Father, he manages to gasp out, patting the lord's back as best he can with limbs that still feel half made of seawater. Earl Selwyn finally pulls back to inspect his son, his usual mask of composed Stormlander. Wisdom is completely gone. Now only the wild-eyed joy remains of a father who was preparing just an hour ago to bury his own eldest son. Feeling the deep chill, the lord tears off his black velvet cloak and bundles him inside. He commands that they return to the castle to find Meister Armin immediately, but Gallant tells him to wait. The crowd stares in silence, the balding steward with his anxious, receding hair, the knights and guards dressed in boiled leather, and his little sister with her tear-streaked, freckled face. Without explanation, he steps toward the reef where the tide spat him out, searching the wet seawater and gravel for the strange object he half remembered carrying ashore. There a faint, clear shimmer shines deep beneath the water. He reaches down and closes his hand around it, lifting the relic as everyone freezes. This blade in his hand is no mortal weapon. Its entire length radiates a soft cyan light, like the breath of the deep sea drawn into steel. The light is gentle rather than blinding, rippling like the calm surface of the Bay of Tarth under moonlight. Along both edges of the blade, 2 thin orange-red lines glow, like the horizon just before the sun rises from the sea. The guard and hilt are made of a grayish-white material, warm as ivory yet hard as cold metal. At the pommel, an oval dark blue gemstone sits, ringed by a band of tiny inscriptions. The entire sword in his 8-year-old hand feels completely weightless, light as morning mist. Though he holds it for the first time, every man present feels it. Everyone on that beach already knows its name. The word whispers in their ears as if a silent whisper had been laid into all of them at once. Oathkeeper, a holy sword. One of the knights breathes, the sword of morning light. Oathkeeper, the young lord found it. One after another, the men in boiled leather drop to one knee, their swords clanging against the wet stone, and they look at him with a kind of feverish devotion that is dangerous to wear. Brienne, still streaked with tears, points at the sword in his hand and gabbles excitedly. To their father, brother, oathkeeper. Erlwyn's mouth hangs open. Stuart Claude meets his lord's eye, and his shock turns slowly into wild joy. He cannot find words for, and while they all stare at the sword he is holding, something else has happened that none of them can see. A classic system screen appears in his line of sight, written in translucent blue script, hanging in the air directly in front of his eyes, the way a window might hang on a wall. Gallant. Terarth, title none, strength 3.12, agility 4.1, spirit 12.8, magic blank. Skills and percentages: swordsmanship at 3, archery at 7, riding at 4. The common tongue of Westeros at 27, swimming at 29, legendary bloodlines. 3 of them, blood of the Evenstar at 3% development, Targaryen bloodline at 0, Storm King bloodline at 0, Storm King bloodline at 0, legendary. Weapon, Oathkeeper, gold tier quality at maximum, cannot be upgraded, legendary. Pet none, judgment points 0. Beside several of these lines is a small gray plus sign, and at the bottom is that one strange word, judgment, with a number after it, and the number is empty. So this is his golden finger. He calls out for a system in his mind, the way 1,000 transmigrator novels had taught him you were supposed to, and there is no answering voice, whatever this panel is. It has no intelligence to converse with. The pluses are gray, which means he cannot click them yet, The judgment points line sits there with its empty number, so in order to add to any of these attributes, he must first acquire judgment points. How exactly does one acquire judgment points? The panel does not say. He feels the small headache that any transmigrator would feel at being given a manual without instructions, and he cannot help wondering whether this golden finger of his is a gift of his crossing over or whether it has been pulled out of the sea along with this sword, legendary weapon, Oathkeeper, gold. The only thing on the panel whose quality is already at the very top. The blade in his hand catches his attention again. He bends his eye to the inscriptions. At the pommel, and the small ring of letters resolves itself for him alone. It reads Oathkeeper, the legendary holy sword that the Maiden of the Seven, the legends of the seven-pointed star, had bestowed upon Gallant of Morn in the Age of Heroes. The sword is real, the sword is his, he cannot quite hide his excitement. In Westeros, what knight does not dream of carrying a named ancestral blade? The oldest houses pride themselves on a single piece of Valyrian steel, and now, 8 years old and still wet with seawater, he is holding a sword that surpasses Valyrian steel as morning light surpasses lamplight. He lifts it experimentally. It cuts the air with no resistance at all, and its weight perfectly suits the small body he has inherited, as if it has measured him and adjusted itself. And to settle the matter completely, on the backswing Gallant accidentally clips the protruding corner of a reef, and a chunk of stone the size of his head slides cleanly into the water. The cut is smooth as a mirror. Even cutting through solid iron like butter would not begin to describe this blade. Earl Selwyn whispers in a trembling, raspy voice, "Is this Oathkeeper?" He had named his son Gallant to bless him with a legendary hero's name, never imagining his eldest son would actually find the lost holy sword that had been lost since the Dawn Age. He reaches out a trembling hand to touch it. But the moment his fingertip brushes the steel, he yanks it back with a sharp hiss. As if struck by lightning, a bright red burn appears on his finger with a faint thread of smoke curling upward. The holy sword only chooses its own master, Claude quietly calls out, but there is zero displeasure on the Earl's face. There is only pure joy. He commands his steward to try next. And Claude grits his teeth, reaches out, and is also burned. The two look at each other. The Earl commands every knight and guard to try, and one by one, swallowing hard, they reach out, only to recoil with cries of pain and burns that will leave permanent scars on their hands. Yet not a single man looks angry. Every one of them looks reverent. They never expected in their lives that their young master falling into the sea would mean they would be present when the lost holy sword of Tarth returned to the world. Gallant plants Oathkeeper into the sand and pulls it free. Just like that, the men climb back onto their feet, and Earl Selwyn finally lets his long-held smile break out into pure, breathless wonder. Back to the castle, he commands his men. The guards roar their assent. The Earl takes a leather sheath from one of them, wrapping the sword safely inside before scooping Gallant up onto his horse beside him. While Steward Claude takes little Brienne, and the entire company turns away from the rising tide to ride for Evenfall Hall. The fortress sits on a hill on the western coast of Tarth, looking across the blue bay toward Storm's End on the opposite shore of the strait. The castle is built of weathered gray stone, its walls thick and rugged from the sea weather. At its center rises the tall Dusk Star Tower with their yellow sun and blue moon banner, mottled green, with sea rust marking 1,000 years of history. By the time they ride into the courtyard, old Armin is already waiting, dressed in gray, his chain heavy across his chest. He reports that fires are lit and soup is ready. The moment the Earl dismounts, he has no idea about the legendary sword yet, completely unable to understand why everyone looks so incredibly joyful rather than grieved. With a fiery excitement no one is trying to hide, inside the great hall, Claude and Armin strip the boy's wet clothes off him, bundling him into a thick wool blanket and placing him directly in front of the hearth. Claude's breath catches When he sees Gallant set Oathkeeper down, right onto the stone floor, Armin stares at the strangely beautiful longsword and wisely decides to ask questions later. He places a warm bowl of spiced soup with mint into the boy's hands. Encouraging him to sip it slowly, little Brienne keeps tossing small handfuls of kindling onto the fire, thinking a brighter flame will heal her beloved brother faster. Gallant cannot help but reach out and wrap her in a tight hug. She is nothing like the cold, distant sibling from his past life. She burrows trustingly inside. The wool blanket covers her until only her freckled nose and two bright sapphire eyes peek out at Gallant from the folds. The closeness of it cracks something open inside. Him that he had thought was shut for good, Earl Selwyn watches them across the hearth. And a slow, deep smile of relief works itself across his face. Then his gaze falls on the just maid. Steeling himself, the Earl reaches for it. This time he has learned. He grasps only the leather sheath. Even so, the sheer weight surprises him. 30 or 40 pounds, at least twice the weight of an ordinary two-handed sword, and he must use both hands to hold it level. Yet earlier, Gallant had swung the very same blade, easily one-handed. The sword adjusts its weight for its master, becoming heavy in any other hand. He examines the pommel inscriptions. At the pommel, reading just made, he sets the blade down very carefully and exhales. He stares for a long while at the family banner above the hearth. 2 suns on a red field and 2 moons on blue, the sigil of House Tarth. House Stark has been glorious, House Baratheon has been glorious, House Lannister, House Gardiner, even the upstart Tyrells of Highgarden, all of them have been glorious, but honestly, House Tarth has not left a real mark on Westeros for a very long time. The head of House Tarth had once been honored with the title Evenstar. No one calls them that any longer. The end of dusk, his father whispers under his breath, the family motto coming to him unbidden, the coming of dawn. He looks across the hearth at Gallant, cradling Brienne, and he allows himself for the first time to think that perhaps Gallant is the dawn of House Tarth. When the fire has settled and Brienne has dozed off against Gallant's chest, his father turns his head toward Gallant again. Gallant, he says, and his voice has a careful edge, asking why Gallant had jumped into the sea and that cave without thinking, and if old Feck's son led him. Gallant instantly understands what his father is really asking. He shakes his head, telling him that old Feck's son did nothing and there is no need to trouble him. In his borrowed memories, the fisher boy had begged the former Gallant not to enter. Selwyn's eye holds his for a moment longer, weighing whether some scheme might have been at work against the heir of House Tarth, but in the end he believes Gallant. He then asks why he was so certain the holy sword was in the cave. Gallant thinks and tells him a useful lie, claiming he heard a call from the shore, a call from the holy sword. Selwyn's eyes widen as his chest heaves, and Gallant nods gravely. After all, the boy does not know how strangely he will behave in the days ahead, and there is no harm in suggesting early on that the sword speaks directly to him in ways no other man can understand. Earl Selwyn fills in the rest of the picture for himself, believing his son is marked for some truly monumental responsibility, and that the boy is favored by the seven. The conviction settles on him. The way snow settles on a roof by its own slow weight. He will not speak of it. But Gallant sees in the rapid breath behind his composure that he has taken on. Single afternoon, a hope so heavy it frightens him, but Gallant does not feel any of that weight. Instead, he quietly teases his sister, who has begun to drowse, pinching one of her plump, warm hands with his thumb and forefinger. 4-year-old Brienne is sturdy and warm and thoroughly cute. There is no hint yet of the nearly 2 meters tall warrior she will become a decade later. No awkward growth, no crooked teeth, but her brilliant sapphire eyes match the books perfectly. Even her freckles are exactly where the pages said they would be. He is already quite fond of her. He recalls how the original story called her ugly, mostly due to her height. Her crooked teeth and broad-built strength made people judge her too quickly. but it was never because her underlying facial structure was actually bad. With just a bit of quiet attention, this little girl could truly thrive. She could easily grow into an exceptionally tall, strong, and handsome woman. Simple skincare, straight teeth, and balanced training would do the trick. He files these notes away. He has plenty of time, plenty. He reopens the system panel in his mind. He reads through the screens slowly while his little sister sleeps against his chest. Strength 3.12, Agility 4.1, normal adults average 10. His spirit is 12.8, that is far too high. An 8-year-old cannot possess this. It is the soul of a transmigrator. That powerful soul sits directly on top of the child's accumulated memories. His current skill percentages align perfectly with Gallant's actual memories. Writing, archery, and swordsmanship are real, but he is only beginning. His common tongue is at 27% since he is only 8 years old. Swimming is at 29% because he was born on an island and raised near the sea. He assumes full mastery means 100%. Then, the bloodlines surprise him. The panel reveals 3 legendary bloodlines that he never expected to find. Every single one is undeveloped. The Evenstar blood runs deep in House Tarth. It goes back to the Dawn Age, likely explaining why Brienne grows so remarkably tall and strong. Perhaps a tiny spark of that Evenstar blood is already waking in her body. Next is the Storm King bloodline, tracing back to the legendary House Durand. They ruled Storm's End long before House Targaryen ever came to power. House Tarth and House Dandon intermarried for centuries, leaving clear traits behind. It shows in their hair. The men of Tarth carry thick black locks. Just like House Baratheon, they carry the dark hair of ancient Storm Kings. Meanwhile, Brienne carries the pale gold hair of her mother's noble line. Those make sense. But the third lineage, the Targaryen bloodline, is a massive shock. House Baratheon has ruled the Stormlands for over 2 centuries. They married into House Tarth often, bringing the dragon blood of Valyria. Although heavily diluted, it remains. Through these marriages, a thread was woven. A tiny thread of Targaryen blood has settled quietly deep inside his own body. For most of House Tarth, this is useless, but watch, for him, it changes everything. He can actively spend system points to awaken this ancient, dormant dragon power. Allocating enough points would eventually grant him complete immunity to hot fire. He would also gain the power to call and control mighty dragons. Having a dragon versus not having one makes a completely massive difference in this world. So that is the exact power he will hunger to feed, just not yet. For now, he has absolutely no idea how to earn judgment points. Suddenly, the steward's voice breaks his deep study. "Young master, the bath is ready. Please come up and rest." Claude stands at his side with a smile. His bald head reflects a soft, warm glow from the nearby firelight. The boy looks down and realizes that although he is dry, sea salt remains. Gritty dirt clings to his skin. He gently lifts Brienne onto his father's lap as lord. Selwyn settles her against him with a gentle, weary affection, telling him to go on. He says to get some good rest. He follows Claude up the spiral granite stairs at the Dusk Star Tower, where iron oil lamps in the stone walls throw long, flickering shadows onto the stone. The muffled sound of the sea comes drifting up through a high, small window. His bedroom is on the 5th floor, behind a heavy oak door carved with a yellow sun and blue moon. Inside hangs a faded tapestry of Gallant of myrrh, hand in hand with the Maiden of the Seven, alongside a thick wool rug and a wooden tub, already steaming with hot water as lavender petals and herbs float on. The surface, a fire crackles in the hearth, near a small adjoining door left slightly ajar that opens into the maid's narrow alcove, a girl of 13 or 14 with chestnut hair tied in a ponytail rises from the tub side and curtsies. Galina, the maid his late mother had personally chosen for him, has served him since he was small enough to need her to dress him. She helps him out of his salt-stiff clothes with the easy skill of long habit, and he sinks into the warm water and the smell of rosemary. Feeling his body give up the last of its tension, he tells her she may go for now. She bows away into her alcove. He leans his head back against the rim of the wooden tub, closing his eyes to think. He has arrived far too early, by Meister Armin's reckoning. The year is 275 after the conquest. The Mad King Ares still sits the Iron Throne. Ned Stark is 12, only 4 years older than him. The tourney at Harrenhal is more than a decade away. The War of the Usurper is even further off. For the moment, he belongs to the same generation as Jaime Lannister, Ned Stark, and Peter Baelish. All of them are still children. This is interesting, he thinks with closed eyes, as the corner of his mouth lifts in a small smile. By the time the real plot begins, he will be around 30, in the prime of his strength, having spent 20 years getting ready. He is the heir to Evenfall, the legitimate son of a lord. Tarth might not be the wealthiest fief on the eastern coast. That title still belongs to the Arbor, but Tarth has a population near 150,000, 3 towns and 20 or 30 villages, mountains, grasslands, and forests. He commands a fleet of more than a dozen trading ships that can be turned to war. With one word, his father can muster 20 knights and 3,000 soldiers. Tarth lies northeast of Storm's End, the natural shield of House Baratheon, and the closest island in Westeros to the continent of Essos, 5 days' sail to Pentos and 3 to King's Landing. A truly excellent place to start, and he simply cannot find a single fault with it, armed with the knowledge of a transmigrator and 20 years of patient work with a brother who is heir and his sister Brienne, alongside 3 bloodlines, a holy sword, and a status panel promising growth in exchange for judgment. He can accomplish incredible things. When the War of the Usurper comes, House Tarth could easily claim its share of the spoils by backing Robert. He finds himself soaking in the steam, beginning to plan. Galina's voice reaches him through the alcove door, asking if he would like more hot water. Instead, he rises from the tub, water sliding off his body, and tells her he is finished. She drapes a soft, warm towel around him, drying him as she always has. He is only 8 years old, not yet developed, and refusing her care now would only seem strange. She hands him underclothes and a black silk sleeping robe, ringing a small bell to summon a few sturdy serving women come in to carry the heavy tub of cooling water out. Galina tidies the bed once more and bows before leaving. He is not ready to sleep just yet. He pushes the window open into the bright afternoon light. Deep blue sea meets a pale horizon before him. He looks down at Sapphire Port. Merchants dock while fishing boats head home. Red roofs of Sapphire Town contrast against the green cliffs. Above those cliffs, the gray granite walls of Evenfall Hall rise 20 feet high. The stone is 10 feet thick at the base, crowned by a low crenellated parapet with iron slits. To the southeast, a half-collapsed watchtower leans heavily against the massive curtain wall. Its crumbling ruins are completely overgrown with stubborn patches of green sea rocket. Dusk Star Tower itself stands 100 feet tall, a beacon for merchant ships in the fog. Passing the strait, towers, kitchens, and storerooms flank the courtyard. Weathered bluish-black tiles cover them, with white smoke rising from 2 square chimneys. The courtyard below is paved with clean gravel and crushed seashells. Nothing like muddy Winterfell. To be fair, this beats the version he remembers seeing on television. Behind the castle, ancient trees mark the godswood where the boy he used to be once played. 1,000 years of careful Tarth rule has built a fortress, both beautiful and stubborn. Safe to say, whatever he expected from medieval life, this is far better. He crawls into bed, falling fast asleep. Not even on Earth did he rest like this. Perhaps legendary bloodlines grant healthy sleep. The next morning, he wakes up feeling more rested than he can ever remember. Angelina calls out a cheerful good morning from her alcove to greet him. She brings him hot water and toiletries. Of course, the toothbrush in the cup is primitive. It is just a chewed twig, about the length of a single chopstick. The top is frayed into rough bristles. He dips it in salt just like before. He brushes as best he can, though his gums sting. He must invent a proper toothbrush. He needs to invent many small things. The thought makes him smile as Gallant addresses him. She puts a close-fitting linen shirt on him, followed by a dark gray robe. Gold embroidery secured by 3 ebony buttons. Next come plain black linen trousers, tied securely below the knees with leather cords. Cowhide boots protect his feet on the rocky ground, and a belt sits at his waist. This cowhide belt has a gold buckle. It marks him as a noble. A commoner could never afford this outfit, even after an entire year of hard labor. In his past life, he only owned a couple of outfits, worn until they fell apart. He used to reject every schoolgirl confession because of his poor clothes. He was always ashamed. Now he stands before a mirror. The brass mirror sits in the corner, showing the boy he has suddenly become. He has short, dark, slightly curly hair with messy ends, the black hair of Storm King's. It is the exact same black hair as his father's. His eyes are clear blue. They are ringed with light gray near the pupil, like a sea in the morning mist. His pale skin has freckles scattered across his nose. He has long, slender brows, a straight nose, and a firm but youthful chin. Standing nearly 5 feet tall, he is massive for an 8-year-old. He stares at his reflection. Looking at his reflection in the brass, the boy smiles, thinking that this face truly suits the master of Oathkeeper. He leaves his bedroom and heads down the spiral stairs to the great hall, where the maids are already laying out breakfast. They greet the young master with bows and a brightness in their eyes, a look they never had before. Clearly, the news of his holy sword has already spread through the entire household. Stuart Claude tells him his father rode to Sapphire Town last night and has not yet returned. Brienne is still fast asleep, so he sits alone at his usual spot. Breakfast is a feast. 3 kinds of bread, 4 kinds of meat, 2 soups, fresh apples, blood oranges, and roasted pumpkin chunks to balance out the richness. The cooking is pretty plain compared to his old life, but the ingredients are top-notch. He enjoys his meal and then, instead of waiting for his sister to wake, he heads up to the 3rd floor of the adjacent tower, where Meister Armin holds his lessons among the ravens. Meister Armin greets the boy with sparkling eyes. He was the first one the Earl told when learning of the holy sword the night before, barely sleeping from sheer excitement. The heavy chain draped across his gray robes is thicker than the chains of most meisters. It features bronze for astronomy, black iron for history, silver for medicine, gold for arithmetic, a rare platinum link for his mastery of ancient Valyrian texts, and a small copper link for navigation and cartography. He has served House Tarth for 30 years, now 60. His hair is streaked with gray, but his sharp eyes have not lost their focus. He kindly suggests the boy should rest after his near drowning yesterday, but Gallant shakes his head, saying knowledge matters as much as steel. The old Meister is delighted. Few noble children, especially boys, choose study over riding and hunting. Learning that the new bearer of the legendary sword has chosen scholarship brings him immense joy. To begin, he tests Gallant on heraldry. First asking about House Royce of the Vale, Gallant recalls the details instantly. Runestone north of Gulltown along the narrow sea. Their sigil has pebbles between runes on an orange field, with their house words being "We remember." Gallant confidently adds more details. He notes that the Royces are one of the few houses in the Vale descending from the first men, whose Bronze Age kings held the title of Bronze Kings. In the past, they even carried the ancestral Valyrian steel sword, Lament, until its loss in the Dance of the Dragons. Still, they keep their ancient bronze armor carved with protective runes said to ward the wearer. Now, get this, Gallant realizes he can remember things with a absolute clarity his past self on Earth never possessed. His memory has become incredibly sharp and dependable. Meister Armin is clearly impressed, next asking about House Velaryon. Gallant promptly describes Driftmark and the silver seahorse on a sea-green field, reciting their words, the old, the true, the brave. He adds that the Velaryons came to Driftmark long before the Targaryens ever claimed Dragonstone, they share classic Valyrian features, though they were never dragon lords, and the vital role of master of ships in the realm usually goes to their lord. At this, the Meister stops him. Gallant, he says, you have completely mastered heraldry, so let us begin a new lesson. He writes 3 choices on a piece of parchment and slides it over: geography and cartography of the 7 kingdoms, noble etiquette and laws of succession, or medicine and herbs. Gallant ponders the options before choosing geography. Etiquette and laws can easily wait, and medicine is secondary, but a transmigrator without a proper map is practically blind. A transmigrator who refuses to waste his good fortune. Gallant then asks to take a second course as well. Meister Armin agrees and asks which one, to which Gallant answers Valyrian. The Meister's brow lifts. Valyrian is taught chiefly to children of House Targaryen and House Valyrian. To Westerosi nobles outside that circle, it is almost useless since only the free cities use it. Gallant gives him a simple reason. He hears foreign merchants speaking the Valyrian language at Sapphire Port. He is curious about Essos and hopes to travel there. His truer reason that riding a dragon requires Valyrian is a secret he keeps to himself. Travel to those cities, the Meister nods. It is no bad ambition. For a young heir, the Meister has spent 30 years on Tarth meeting merchants from Essos and even the Summer Isles, and believes a journey would broaden the boy. Very well, I shall teach you both. These lessons will be condensed, so study hard. Meister Armin unrolls a great map on the long table, starting with Westeros. Gallant picks it up almost as fast as the Meister lays it down, thanks to hours spent in his past life staring at electronic maps of these very lands. The Meister smiles at his speed. Then he takes down a slim volume of Valyrian poetry, teaching the boy Valyrian script and pronunciation through verse, not the method a sane teacher would choose, but in this world, they teach with whatever is at hand. One has. Gallant grits his teeth and listens. After 2 incense sticks of Valyrian, he checks his system panel quietly. The skill bar does not yet show Valyrian, below 1%. The panel excludes it completely, it seems. Not a problem, he has no judgment points to spend and no idea how to earn them. Valyrian will come. A maid knocks. The lord is back in the hall calling for them. Gallant bows to Meister Armin, who tells him with a warm smile that today's lesson ends here. Gallant follows her down to the great hall, where his father waits with a sword in hand. From the hilt, he recognizes Oathkeeper, but the crude leather wrap is gone. Talk about a massive upgrade. In its place is a splendid black scabbard. This explains his father's sudden departure last night, visiting Byron, the most skilled blacksmith on Tarth in Sapphire Town, to have a scabbard hammered through the night. The faint redness in Lord Selwyn's eyes shows he has not slept at all. Gallant, the scabbard is ready, the Lord says, offering the weapon with both hands. Taking it one-handed to examine, he feels the black iron hammered rough for a sturdy grip, lined in light pinewood that shows its honey gold grain along the seam. A band of gray sharkskin sits near the throat for grip. Silver threads trace across the iron and wood, creating a cold, gleaming line. The piece measures about 4 feet from sheath mouth to point. Most strangely, the leather clasp is designed for the back rather than the hip. His father has thought ahead. The diagonal shoulder rig fits his small body better than a hip belt would. He is only 8 and too short for a 4-foot sword on the hip. On his back, within a year or 2, he can wear it perfectly. Gallant draws it slightly. The clear, cool light of the blade flares. A soft, pleasing metallic note hums as a third of the breathtaking blade leaves its sheath. Every face in the hall fixes on the weapon with shallow breath. This blade is so beautiful that merely looking at it absorbs the mind. Gallant sheathes the steel. Gallant weighs the scabbarded sword in his hand. It is at the absolute limit of what a child of his size could comfortably carry. He noticed his father straining when he handed it over, but to him it feels light, meaning Oathkeeper has its own opinion of the Proper weight for its master and adjusts. No wonder the system panel calls its quality maxed and unimprovable. Thank you, father, he says, and Earl Selwyn nods at him with the warm smile of a man who is still deeply grateful that his son is alive to thank him. Right then, Brienne comes running in with sand on her hands and bare feet, throwing herself right into his arms. She had been at the beach, building little castles. Gallant, his father says, watching her closely. Brienne is 4.5 tomorrow. Let her join you in Meister Armin's lessons. He nods. She is already sturdier and brighter than most girls her age, and ready for the common tongue. Claude is sent off to tell the kitchens to get lunch ready, and as he goes, Meister Armin hurries in, holding a letter still warm from a raven, and tells his father that the queen has given birth to a healthy boy named Viserys by King Aerys. His father chuckles. After a tragic string of miscarriages and stillbirths, the queen has finally given the king a healthy prince. His mood might actually improve now. Gallant silently shakes his head, thinking to himself that this is Viserys, the sleeping dragon. The Meister then mentions a second letter that arrived with the first. Lord Tywin plans a grand tourney at Lannisport next month to celebrate the prince's birth. His father reads the invitation, frowns, and immediately declares he will not be attending. Instead, he will have Claude arrange a proper gift for the naming day. The Meister nods and prepares to leave, but Selwyn bids him stay, sit down, and eat with them. He has things to discuss. Gallant sits down with his little sister on his lap while the two older men begin laying out the complex political map of Westeros. They speak of the growing rift between King Aerys and his hand, Lord Tywin. Disagreements turned hostile, and the upcoming 10th name day of Stannis, the second son of Lord Steffan Baratheon, and the dwarf son of Lord Tywin, who survived despite everyone's grim expectations and is currently growing up at Casterly Rock. Gallant listens, finding these famous names familiar from his past life. They are only children now. He begins to understand why. The king is called the Mad King, and trust me, his ideas are absolutely wild. He once proposed to Lord Rickard Stark of Winterfell that a brand new wall be built 100 leagues north of the existing wall to claim the land. In between, Lord Rickard was left completely speechless, since building another wall was impossible, and the vast area in question was already home to 10,000 wildlings, meaning war. Then there was Sunspear. The king told the Princess of Dorne that he planned to dig a massive underground canal right through the Red Mountains to bring water down from the rainforests, expecting to make the Dornish desert bloom with flowers. Hearing this, Gallant almost chokes on his bread. He thinks Aerys and his second son Viserys are clearly cut from the exact same cloth. Viserys's future chants about waking the dragon were surely learned at his father's knee. Gallant notices how his own father makes no effort to hide his contempt for the king, contrasting it with his careful praise for Lord Tywin. He wonders if Tywin is quietly driving Aerys mad, or simply serving competently in dark times. Conditions he cannot tell yet. Still, his administrative skills, military leadership, and political acumen are top tier in the Seven Kingdoms. After lunch, Brienne and he go up to nap. Children grow on sleep. When he rises, he slings Oathkeeper across his back and walks to the godswood behind the castle. There among the old trees, a tall brown-haired man in plate armor stands, waiting with his back turned, and at the sound of Gallant's step he turns a sword, scarred face splitting into a smile. Sir Goodwin, master at arms of Evenfall Hall, who took 6th at the Highgarden tourney 7 years ago, is stern with the soldiers, but he is easier on young Gallant, telling him his father sent word to continue today's lesson. Goodwin looks the boy over, checking his color and gait, and is satisfied that yesterday's near drowning did him no lasting harm. Gallant makes him laugh, replying that any kid on Tarth has swallowed seawater in their time. Goodwin warns him not to say that anywhere his father might hear. Then his eyes find the sword slung across his back. He asks if this is the weapon found at Morn's Point. Gallant draws the blade in the long afternoon shadows of the Godswood in that clear, cool light flares once more. Goodwin's face goes completely still. Truly extraordinary, he whispers, hailing from the riverlands near Harrenhal, the master-at-arms had heard the rumors yesterday but kept a lingering doubt. Now that doubt is entirely gone. He admits that this sight is more stirring than even Arthur. Dane drawing dawn, with a shrug and a grin, he says he won't let Gallant practice with it. A graze from this blade is more than a scratch. Gallant explains he brought the sword for testing, not sparring. Yesterday it sliced a chunk off a reef without him even noticing. He wants answers, and Goodwin's eyes light up. What warrior wouldn't want to test a holy sword? He points toward an old dried stump in the godswood. It is 2 men round, cropped 2 feet from the earth, marked with 100 arrow scars from Gallant's past archery practice. Try cutting that, the master challenges. Gallant grips Oathkeeper with both hands and delivers a single swing. It sounds like a blade slicing parchment, sharp and dry. The upper third of the stump slides off diagonally, thudding heavily onto the moss and tossing dark earth into the air. The cut is mirror smooth. Goodwin walks over, bends down, and looks closely. For a long moment, he is speechless. Cutting through a thick, seasoned stump with a greatsword is usually an exhausting chore. A normal blade would bind 2 or 3 inches deep at best, but Gallant sliced a third clean off, and the weapon felt as though it cut through stiff cardboard. There was only a brief flash of resistance before the sword slid through like silk. Gallant swings again to be absolutely sure. This time an even larger chunk slides off with even less resistance. The legendary weapon feels like a tiny twig in his hands. He cannot hide his sheer delight. It ridiculously reminds him of striking cabbage heads with a stick as a boy. On Earth, Goodwin watches him swing, breathing heavily. Then, without a word, he strips off his own plate vest, walks to the wooden practice dummy Gallant always uses, and ties the heavy steel vest firmly in place. Try that, Goodwin challenges. Are you sure, sir? Gallant asks. Plate is expensive. This vest alone is worth 2 gold dragons, and a Tarth fisherman works a full year to earn 20 or 30 silver. Goodwin believes Lord Selwyn will cover the cost. Fair enough. Gallant sets his stance and grips the hilt with both hands. He swings with everything his 8-year-old body can muster. Sparks fly with a hard, clean ring. When the blade halts, he sees the chest plate has been slit diagonally along nearly 3/4 of its length, only barely held together by the lower hem. Beneath it, the wooden dummy carries a deep gash. Anyone wearing that armor would be completely gutted. Goodwin looks like a man who has just glimpsed a future he never expected. If an 8-year-old can do this, Goodwin is clearly wondering, what will the 18-year-old do, and what could he do on a charging warhorse? He shakes himself. Gallant, he says, this sword truly lives up to its name as a holy blade. Gallant nods. The 7-pointed star tells him that Galladon of Myr drew Oathkeeper only 3 times in his life. Each time was for an unprecedented foe of power, and he is beginning to suspect the sword has more to it than he has yet seen. The faint orange line along its edge traces a magic he has not yet learned to call. He thinks of the magic line on his panel sitting at 0. Perhaps the deeper power of Oathkeeper draws on magic the wielder must himself supply. The Age of Heroes was a time of magic and monsters, and a hero of that age would have needed more than a sharp blade to earn his name. But Goodwin will not let the lesson become a sermon. Goodwin warns that the sword's power is astonishing, but begs the boy not to lean on it. A knight's strength is never the sword in his hand. Arthur Dne without Dawn is still the greatest swordsman in the 7 kingdoms. A farmer with Oathkeeper would lose to any knight. Gallant gets it. The sword is the icing, he is the cake. Goodwin nods, satisfied. Switch to the wooden practice sword. Today's lesson begins. His way of teaching the boy is wonderfully simple. Goodwin never spars with him. He has spent 2 years building him from the foundation up. Grip, generation of force from the core. Footwork, never rushing forward, never permitting bad habits. The boy's foundation is strong, so now they work on precision. 2 months ago, Goodwin set him to stand before the dummy while calling out. Target areas: heart, liver, spleen, lungs, head, neck, hands, and Gallant had to whip the wooden sword in and strike that exact spot within a second of his. Calling it, now Gallant can hit any target named within a heartbeat. Goodwin has moved up to a harder drill, using a basket of sour green apples from the surrounding hills standing directly across from Gallant and throwing them while the boy, holding the wooden sword like a bat, must strike each apple out of the air. In the first weeks, he could not hit a single one and got pelted several times himself until his brow lost its pride and learned to track them. Now he hits 1 out of 3. Goodwin throws at 70% of his strength, which is fast. When Gallant can hit every apple, he promises to replace them with green dates the size of olives. Fast, accurate, ruthless. That is the heart of the sword, Goodwin tells him, and Gallant fully agrees. They end the lesson when the basket is empty and the sun is sliding low. Goodwin wipes his eyes, looks at the empty basket, and tells him, smiling, not to go back to the hall yet. Earl Selwyn has asked him to bring Gallant down to the meadow outside Sapphire Town. There will be an execution before the sun sets. An execution, Gallant says, mopping sweat from his neck with his sleeve. 2 rapists, the man calmly explains. Gallant nods. In Westeros, such men face execution. His father, like Lord Stark, always carries out the grim sentence himself. He wants to hear their final words and show the Lord's absolute authority. Gallant has watched 2 executions before. His father is preparing his heir. The eldest son must learn to rule. They mount up and ride down toward Sapphire Port through the evening. Tarth has 3 towns, and Sapphire is the largest. It sits right next to the best harbor on the island. Execution day is here. The hangings and beheadings happen outside the town walls. A crowd has already gathered. His father's personal guards stand ready alongside 30 or 40 curious local townsfolk. Heads turn as their horses approach. The crowd whispers the name of young Master Gallant. A path clears. The crowd murmurs when they see the sword on his back. The rumors have only had a day and a half to spread all across this island. Rumors fly fast when you're the son of a lord. The small folk are whispering. They whisper that Gallant, named after the legendary Galladon, found Oathkeeper. He found it at Murren's Point. Perhaps the young master is a legend reborn. Soon everyone on the island will know. He will not just be the heir. He will be a legend. Gallant greets his father and quickly dismounts from his horse. Lord Selwyn stands in the center of the meadow, hands resting on his greatsword. Wearing heavy leather gloves, the lord keeps his face completely solemn. He smiles only when he sees his son. 2 bound men kneel before him. Both prisoners look wretched. One is thin, pale-haired, his head bowed in defeat. The other is a burly, scarred brute with half an ear missing. His savage eyes are fixed on the lord. Selwyn wastes no more time. He lifts his heavy sword and stares down at the thin prisoner, Brass. Brass, son of Glenn, do you have any final words in your defense? The pale man just shakes his head, saying nothing. Lord Selwyn begins the sentence. He speaks in the name of King Aerys II of House Targaryen, King of the Andals, the Rhoynar, and the Protector of the Kingdoms. I, Selwyn of House Tarth, Lord of Tarth, sentence you to die. The blade rises. With those final words, the heavy steel comes down in a clean sweep. The head rolls away with a wet crunch. Blood sprays across the grass. Gallant's heart skips a beat, but he does not flinch or feel sick. Goodwin notices the boy's steady gaze and gives a silent, approving nod. Several knights and townsfolk notice too. Lord Selwyn glances back, looking satisfied. He turns to the second prisoner, Saguri, asking if he has any defense. The bald man looks at his companion's headless corpse, his fear turning to rage. Defend what? He sneers, displaying complete and utter contempt for his impending death. That woman was mine to take, and what of it? Who are you to judge me, Lord? Sooner or later, the heads of Utaris will be rolling in the dirt too. Your own castle will be stormed, and your women taken just like her. He laughs, but a brown-haired knight suddenly steps forward and kicks his face. He sends Sagiri face first into the dirt, stuffing a filthy rag inside his mouth. The Lord's expression remains completely frozen. He raises his heavy greatsword once more. He begins the sentence, but Gallant suddenly steps forward and interrupts him. Sword and begins, in the name of the Andals, but Gallant suddenly cuts him off. Gallant calls out to wait a moment. Every face in the meadow turns toward him. He asks his father. Could he let him do it? The boy has no stage fright. He steps forward. With a clean metallic ring, he draws Oathkeeper from his back. The cyan glow of the blade and the faint dawn line of orange along its edge speak for him when his 8-year-old voice cannot. A sudden realization comes to him in a flash. This makes perfect sense now. It is far more than just some childish bravado. His panel needs those critical judgment points. Yes, judgment points. They must come from passing judgment, and the test subject is kneeling right there. At his father's feet, his father says, with a surprised but careful face. Yet he sets his sword down, deciding once again to let the boy try. Things that definitely do not match the simple life of an 8-year-old. Any other lord would have shouted at a son for this presumption. He just nods and steps back, giving up his place. The meadow goes dead silent. Gallant stands before the bald man, hands on Oathkeeper, the blade laid across the back of his neck. Gallant makes his voice as solemn as his young body will allow. Sagiri, son of Mudan, your actions have violated the law, and your crimes are unforgivable. In the name of the morning, he declares, you are sentenced to death. There is no further hesitation. He lifts Oathkeeper high and brings it down. With everything in him, cyan and orange flash together with a strange metallic hum. Sagir's head leaves him and bounces twice on the dirt. There is no spray of blood, which completely surprises everyone who sees it. The cut neck is charred, and a thin curl of smoke rises from the stump with a faint sizzling sound. And that is all. The crowd is frozen. Slicing with this sword felt like cutting a rope, easy beyond anything a sword should be. The first kill of his new life is also somehow not difficult for him to bear. Honestly, he can think only of the panel, Gallant Tararth, Title None, Strength 3.12, Agility 4.1, Spirit 12.8, Age 8, Magic blank, Skills and Bloodlines are unchanged. Legendary Pet None, Judgment Points 2 judgment points. His heart pounds as he realizes he guessed correctly. This is exactly how the points are earned. He doesn't know if just any death earns them or only an executed criminal, but the principle is clear now. He closes the panel without spending them. He is only 8 years old and won't be dancing with joy after lopping off a head, no matter how sharp the urge. Looking down at the headless body, he finds he feels only a small distaste, not disgust. A man's corpse is, in the end, not very different from a butchered animal, just blood, meat, and stilled muscle. It is the spillage of intestines and viscera that books and shows had taught him to fear, and in this killing there was almost none. You did well, his father says, stepping over and laying a hand on his shoulder. The Lord has decided in his own way that the bald man's insults provoked him, making this clean beheading an act of righteous anger. He highly approves. He never expected his young son would dare to take a head at 8. Most noble children his age wouldn't even watch. He looks out at the common folk, and none of them have dispersed. They stare at him with the sword still in his hand, as a chant begins low and quiet. Gallant, Gallant. Galladon of myrrh, growing until 30 or 40 voices are chanting together, half waving at. Galladon watches them with a faint, dignified smile. Let us go home, father, he murmurs. The Lord nods and they ride back to Evenfall Hall. Galladon makes some excuse to wash. He hurries up the spiral stairs to the bath, where Galina has already prepared hot water. He sends her to her alcove and sinks into the warm water before opening his panel. 2 judgment points still sit on the screen, resting beside that awkward little number. He scans the rest. The plus by magic is gray and unspendable, his legendary weapon maxed out. No upgrades there. There is no legendary pet either. That leaves strength, agility, or bloodlines. He really wants to spend his 2 points on a legendary bloodline. On the Targaryen one, of course, but he has no idea what that would look like. If he cannot see the direct effects of spending them, he might waste those precious points. So for this first allocation, he decides to play it completely safe. A basic attribute where he will instantly feel the difference, strength or agility. After a brief breath, he chooses strength, the most obvious of all physical sensations. He taps the gray plus next to strength twice with his mind. 2 golden symbols flicker. His judgment points drop down to blank. The strength stat suddenly begins to tick upward. The stat ticks from 3.12 to 3.14. Heat rises inside him. It is hotter than his bathwater, but it is not completely unbearable. It feels as though his blood is starting to boil without actually scalding him. The warmth spreads from his blood into his muscles and cells, sinking deep into his bones. A long, soft sigh escapes him. Suddenly, Galina's voice calls out from her alcove. She asks worriedly if the water is too hot, but he quickly reassures her. He claims he only strained himself during training, and she relaxes. The interruption costs him, as the fading warmth is no longer something he can feel. The physical sensation is gone. The stat improvement is now simply a fact. He presses his fingertips hard against the thick wooden rim of the bathtub. The new strength is definitely there. It is not godlike, but it is unmistakable. The soreness from his training has vanished. That 0.02 increase does wonders. It has given him what would normally take a full week of brutal physical training. The shape of his entire future shifts. A normal Tarth heir takes a decade to grow. Going from strength 3 to strength 4 over a decade is incredibly slow progress. That is less than 0.002 per day. He just bought himself a week. 2 judgment points saved him so much time, and honestly, the implications are absolutely massive. Yet the pressure is immense. He must secure more judgment points regularly to keep growing. Otherwise, this system starves. He immediately thinks of the yellow-haired prisoner his father executed first. That was a completely wasted prisoner. 2 points just vanished into the wind. He must do better. He needs to convince his father to let him handle executions. From now on, he wants to carry out the sentences himself. He dresses quickly. With Galina's help, he heads down to the hall where his father is playing with Brienne. By the fire, she smiles happily upon seeing him and calls him brother. She lifts her chubby little arms, and he walks over to pick her up. She is heavier than last season, but his new strength holds her easily. His father teases him, asking if he thinks Brienne has gotten heavier again. The Lord is also faintly puzzled. Brienne is clearly growing faster than other girls. Meister Armin once said she would grow tall, and it now looks like a fact. Gallant smiles and tells his father she is perfectly fine, feeling light as a feather. He pinches her cheek, knowing she absolutely hates being called heavy. The little girl is pretty sensitive. She immediately closes her eyes and gives his father a smug sidelong glance. His father just laughs, ordering Claude to serve dinner. Over the meal, he asks Gallant how it felt, and Gallant replies it was good. He pauses, speaking slowly. He felt a highly unusual kind of power rising up. Gallant chooses his words with care, explaining that the holy sword itself actually felt excited. His father gapes. Without looking away, he tells Claude to take Brienne to the kitchens. Claude understands instantly and scoops the young girl up. She goes unwillingly, but the warm kitchen is a massive temptation, so she easily lets herself be led away. Once the hall is completely empty of any outside ears, his father leans forward. Gallant explains that after he killed the man, Oathkeeper seemed incredibly pleased. It boosted his strength, not by much, but it was unmistakable. He only shares what is necessary. After all, his father is his ultimate ally. Working together, the two of them can accomplish far more than Gallant alone. The Lord stares at him in heavy silence, chest rising and falling. He already half believes it. Gallant is dead serious, with no reason to joke. After all, Oathkeeper is a legendary holy sword bestowed directly by the Maiden of the Seven, if any blade could possess such raw magic. It would be this weapon that empowers its wielder by slaying the wicked. Could his son truly grow into a legendary hero like Gallant? May the seven bless. Them House Tarth shall finally rise. He quickly gathers his wits and tells Gallant to follow him somewhere after dinner. Gallant naturally asks where. It is already dark outside, but his father wants to verify these claims. Gallant knows exactly what his father has in mind. Things are getting intense. Brienne returns riding triumphantly on Claude's hip, clutching a sweet blueberry tart. Her wet nurse carries her off to bed, and the other servants are dismissed. His father grabs a torch in each hand and leads him across the courtyard. They head toward the low tower in the southeast corner. Claude asks mildly where they are going, but his father only tells him to carry 2 torches. Claude does not ask twice, knowing his master's quiet temper. If the Lord does not speak, he does not wish others to know. A good steward learns to ask fewer questions. Gallant silently admires his father's deep caution. Claude is his most trusted assistant, yet he keeps him in the dark. Not out of distrust, but because secrets are always safer this way. The fewer people who know, the better. His father is incredibly clear-headed. Gallant was completely right to share only a tiny, careful fraction of his abilities. He might be the heir of Evenfall, but at 8 years old, he has no real power. His father, however, can easily order a late-night trip to farm local prisoners. That is exactly what they are doing. The low tower sits directly over Evenfall Hall's dark dungeon. 2 guards salute, opening the heavy wooden door. They are led down a spiral stone staircase, the cold rising as they descend. The stairs open into a long stone corridor lit by flickering wall torches. From a side room, a tall, lean, slightly stooped, one-eyed man slowly emerges. He wears a gray robe, his greasy hair completely messy. The guard bows. He takes his torch and heads back upstairs. The one-eyed man, Gallant's cousin Moan, of a branch of House Tarth, addresses Gallant's father, asking why he has brought Gallant down to this dark, dirty place that might frighten the young master. His father shakes his head, saying that Gallant isn't nearly as fragile as he thinks. Gallant greets his uncle Moan, who nods back with surprising softness. Moan had once been a completely different man. Over a decade ago, during an island raid, his pregnant wife was murdered by vicious pirates, and he hasn't been right since. Gallant's father eventually took the field alongside him, slaughtering every single pirate. Moan even lost an eye. In that battle, the vengeance was settled, but his mind never recovered. He sank into drink. Gallant's father, unable to watch his cousin rot, gave him this job. Torturing prisoners for the Evenfall dungeons, finding some strange pleasure in this work, has kept him going all these years. He is usually short and unpleasant with most of the household, but with Gallant he is gentle, perhaps as his lord's son, or perhaps because the boy reminds him of his own unborn child. Moan. Gallant's father commands, bring out the Lysany stowaway captured a couple days ago, and Fisher, who killed the merchant Jasha and his family, make sure they are tightly bound. Moan raises an eyebrow but keeps his questions inside. He disappears into the dungeon and returns with 2 shackled men, hands chained behind their backs. One is an extremely pale Lysany with thin, curly hair and a fragile frame, looking absolutely terrified. The other prisoner is heavily built, sinister, hook-nosed, around 30 years old, and his name is Fisher. Fisher had murdered the merchant Jasha and his family in their home before fleeing with their hidden treasure. He was caught, but the treasure was not. Moan has both men gagged tightly with rags and extra rope so they won't disturb the young master. Lord Tarth quietly tells Moan to step away, calling the matter rather important, promising to explain when there is time. The curiosity in Moan's eye is huge, but he nods and heads upstairs to drink. He reminds himself of the Golden Arbor wine that just arrived with the caravan. Soon, the dark dungeon is completely empty of onlookers. Gallant slowly draws Oathkeeper, its striking blue glow cutting right through the thick gloom and flickering torchlight. Somehow, the shadows around them only make the sword look even more beautiful. Gallant realizes as he draws how shrewdly his father chose. He has brought a simple Lysani stowaway who merely offended a noble and second, a vicious family killer. His father is actively helping him test the system's rules. Will the blade feed on any death, or only on the blood of the wicked? The Lysani, kicked flat onto the floor, lets out a muffled, desperate whimper. Gallant doesn't waste words. He steps forward, sweeping the glowing oathkeeper straight across the man's neck. Using only one hand, he exerts around 60 or 70% strength, single-handed. A cyan arc flashes, head gone. There is no spray, just red charred edges and a thin curl of smoke. He opens his system panel. Judgment points red 0. He frowns, absolutely nothing. There are two possibilities. First, maybe judgment requires a true crime and the Lysani had committed nothing worth the sword. Second, perhaps the system has an internal cooldown that requires a brief rest before another execution will yield any points. While Gallant ponders this, Fisher struggles on the ground, his eyes growing more ferocious. The murderer clearly hadn't expected to be dragged out so late. Definitely not for an invisible sword. His secret treasure has not even been wrung from him. And now his throat will not have time to speak. It did not work, the boy says. The boy shakes his head. His father calmly tells him to try again. He points right at Fisher, showing no sign of disappointment as the prisoner thrashes. Fisher thrashes with savage eyes. The boy walks over and raises the holy sword, Oathkeeper. To ensure the procedure is exact, he mutters the exact formula from the meadow. He whispers the words, "In the name of the morning, I sentence you to death." He swings the sword down. Crack. Fisher's head rolls as the body falls like cardboard. Opening the panel, Strength 3.14, Agility 4.1, Spirit 12.8. No new skills, no bloodlines. Judgment points are still at 0, nothing. His head begins to ache. The procedure was correct, and he even spoke the formula. Fisher was a proven murderer, a far worse criminal than the bald man from earlier. But wait, absolutely nothing happens. Why? Cooldown, there must be a cooldown. There must be, it is the only explanation that fits, and honestly, it is the right design. Without a cooldown, anyone with a holy sword and a panel could easily grind to invincibility. He could easily grind to godhood, defeating a legendary dragon with just one single stroke. The world simply cannot allow that. He turns to his father, admitting it still failed. His father does not suspect him of lying. Instead, he asks what the reason is. Perhaps, the boy ventures, there is a set time limit required between each use. It needs time to renew. His father ponders this for a moment and nods. He promises to bring him back tomorrow, leaving the boy overwhelmed with immense gratitude. Seriously, any other High Lord hearing such a bizarre story from his own son and seeing absolutely no results after 2 beheadings would be completely and utterly furious. But his father is already planning their next trial, earning a silent thumbs up. They climb the stairs together and step out into the quiet, cool night air. His father orders the guards to send men down to clean up the bodies. Returning to the great hall, the boy heads straight to his room to rest. He stares blankly at the inactive 0, then he quietly shuts down the panel. He reassures himself that with his father helping, they will eventually find the answer. The next morning, Meister Armand teaches him as usual, and Brienne joins the lesson. His sister is lively and well-behaved, showing great obedience toward the old Meister. When given a colorful picture book, she quietly sits down to read with intense focus. Class ends, the Meister heads over to start teaching the little girl. He uses the pictures to teach her her very first words of the common tongue. The morning passes peacefully, and by afternoon, he heads out to the Godswood again. He trains hard with Goodwin, focusing on both swordsmanship and practical archery. Archery is honestly far more enjoyable, and his natural talent for it is clearly stronger. Aiming, drawing, and releasing are already deeply ingrained in his physical muscle memory. All he needs now is enough constant practice to turn those movements into pure instinct. To his surprise, as training winds down, he lands several bullseyes in a row. Opening his panel, he sees his archery skill has risen from 7 to 8%. A tiny step, but progress is progress. Was the previous Gallant close to a bottleneck? Or perhaps his own strong, reincarnated soul has drastically improved his overall comprehension. Either way, he is satisfied. He bids Goodwin farewell and quickly heads back. Reaching the main hall, his father is already waiting, and a maid hands him a warm towel. Gallant wipes the sweat from his face and neck, following his father back down to the southeastern dungeon. The daytime guards are different, and Moan is nowhere in sight. From deep inside the dark cells, the wet wails of an interrogated man echo out. The Lord calls out for Moan. After a brief silence, a heavy door clangs open. Moan emerges from the darkness, wiping fresh blood from his hands with a scrap of burlap. Gallant's father orders the guard to bring out 2 prisoners, just like before. Without a single question, Moan disappears inside and returns with 2 bound captives. The first is a burly old man with a thick white beard, once a legendary warrior. Now he lives as a humble fisherman who let a bitter grudge get the best of him. During a dispute at sea, he kicked his rival overboard, but the victim did not drown. Instead, he washed ashore alive at Storm's End, survived the ordeal, and sailed back to Tarth to demand justice from the Lord, now the old fisherman waits in these damp cells for his final judgment. The second prisoner is a terrified, cruel-looking woman. Following her husband's passing, she brutally abused her 7-year-old stepdaughter, forcing the child to sleep in the filthy pigsty and eat pig slop, beating her with iron tools until a neighbor finally intervened. The Lord locked her away, waiting for the execution day. Moan kicks her onto the dirty floor. However, the guard does not touch the old man, who kneels with his head held high in silence. The Lord waves his men away. Moan smiles and retreats upstairs, always highly perceptive. Gallant draws his legendary sword, Oathkeeper, and steps toward the woman. In the name of the morning, he sentences her to death, speaking without any dramatic flourish, and swings the blade down in one flawless stroke. Crack, her head rolls across the stone. Without wasting a single heartbeat, he opens his system panel. Gallant of Tarth, no title. Strength 3.14, Agility 4.1, Spirit 12.8, Skills swordsmanship 3, Archery 8, Riding 4, Common Tongue 27, Swimming 29, Legendary. Bloodlines Blood of the Evenstar 3, Targaryen 0, Storm King 1, Legendary. Weapon Oathkeeper Gold Maxed, Legendary Pet None, Judgment Points 3. He actually got 3 points. His heart leaps as his theory about the cooldown holds true. The system rewards him for executing the wicked, and this child abuser has earned him 3 points, whereas the bald rapist only gave him 2. The number itself is a quiet judgment of sin. The system clearly rewards him more for punishing heavier guilt. The kneeling old fisherman watches the young lord with a small, puzzled frown. He never expected the Lord to bring his son down here to execute prisoners. And he certainly did not expect the boy to swing a sword with such deadly grace. But the old man's stare matters little compared to that glorious number at the bottom of the screen. 3 whole judgment points. Gallant stares at the glowing panel hovering in his mind. Unable to hide his surprise, yesterday, executing that vile rapist only gave him 2 points. Yet today, after taking the life of a monster who tortured her own stepdaughter, the system awards him 3. It means her unseen sins ran far deeper than anyone knew. Cruelty, theft, or perhaps even worse deeds lay hidden beneath her wicked skin. And the holy sword weighed her soul in full. This confirms 2 vital rules at once. First, there's a cooldown of roughly 1 execution per day, and the points rewarded scale directly with the depth of the victim's sins. Now that he understands these mechanics, Gallant is in an exceptionally good mood, since his father is standing right beside him. There is no reason to hesitate. He opens his system panel once more, his eyes gleaming. The screen shows Gallantarth, Strength 3.14, Agility 4.1. Spirit is 12.8, Magic Blank, Swordsmanship 3%, Archery 8, Riding 4. Common tongue of Westeros is 27, swimming 29, below that 3. Legendary bloodlines, blood of the even star at 3% development, Targaryen. Bloodline at 0, Storm King bloodline at 1, the legendary weapon entry shows. Oathkeeper gold tier already at maximum quality. Yesterday, he spent his points on strength to test the system. Now he wants to experiment elsewhere. He taps the small plus sign beside swordsmanship. 3% jumps to 4% and a cool, clear sensation washes through the back of his mind. The lessons Sir Godwyn has been drilling into him, the way the wrist should pivot, the line of parry should travel, the timing of a thrust settles into place with a clarity he never had before. A pulse of warmth flickers through his right wrist and is gone, leaving the joint feeling looser, more responsive, almost as if the bones have been quietly oiled. So 1 judgment point equals 1% of skill proficiency. He decides not to pour the rest into swordsmanship. Skills can be ground out through practice, while basic attributes and bloodlines are far harder to raise on their own. He lets his gaze fall on the bloodline section and clicks the plus next to the Tarine bloodline. A soft buzz vibrates through his whole body. The panel deducts 1 point and an invisible current rises inside him. Flames seem to leap behind his eyes. His skin goes flushed and hot, and for a moment he sees roaring fires in some other place, dragons wheeling on enormous wings against a black sky. The vision shakes him hard enough that he stumbles, and only by driving Oathkeeper's tip into the stone slab is he able to stay upright. His father lurches forward at once, calling his name, pressing his palm against his forehead and finding skin that feels almost feverish. Even his eyes, his father tells him later, were rimmed with a strange orange glow. The reaction passes in only a few breaths. He steadies himself against his father's arm and nods when asked if it worked, and his father's composure cracks open into a wide, breathless grin he cannot contain. Wielding Oathkeeper to judge the wicked truly does strengthen the wielder. What a gift, what a holy sword the Seven have given them. House Tarth is going to rise. The Lord gathers himself quickly, every inch the great noble again, and asks if they should continue. Gallant shakes his head, saying it seems to be a once-a-day effect. They already proved that last night when the second prisoner produced no reaction. His father nods because he had suspected as much. His gaze settles on the white-haired old man bound near the wall, old shaven, who served Gallantarth's grandfather in many wars. Lord Tarth tells him quietly that he had originally meant to imprison him for a while, then let him go, but he has heard things he was never meant to hear, and so he is sorry. The blade slides forward in a single decisive motion, the tip vanishing into the old man's back, and a dark crimson flower blooms across his chest. Old shaven grunts once, looks up at Gallantarth, looks at his father, and his eyes slowly dim, never understanding what the Lord and his son are really doing here. Gallantarth watches his father wipe the blade and sheath it without hesitation, and he cannot help nodding inwardly. That old man could have been kept for tomorrow's execution, but his father feared a leak. Talk about brutal, and chose not to risk it. Decisive and cold when needed, they climb back to down in the upper floor of the dungeon. Moan sits cross-legged in the shadows, nursing a flask of wine. The father asks him to dispose of the bodies, and Moan, who senses what happened from the apologetic edge in Selwyn's voice, opens his mouth to ask something but then quickly closes it again. He cannot quite comprehend why Lord Selwyn brings his 8-year-old son down here so often to kill, but the boy's eyes look the same as ever, and his father's face permits no questions. So he only nods. They return to the great hall, and after dinner he plays with Brienne for a while before going up to his room. By the window of his bedroom, he opens the panel again under starlight. The Targaryen bloodline now sits at 1%. Exactly as he expected. He wonders how much further he will have to push the development before a dragon will recognize him as its master. Before that, legendary fire immunity manifests. The red comet, though, is still a long way Off, so there is no point obsessing over the dragon line, outside of dragon. Writing the Targaryen bloodline does not seem to add much to raw combat power. He is more curious about what the blood of the Even Star and the Storm King bloodline will reveal as their development climbs, since both of those belong to him by inheritance and could carry traits he has not even guessed at. With one judgment point still to spend, he taps agility and the warm current. Returns, gentler this time, less of a fire and more of a slow loosening. Through every joint, 4 or 5 seconds later it fades, and when he shadow steps around the room, throwing a few light punches and twists, his body does feel a hair lighter, a hair quicker, though the change is much less dramatic than the strength jump. Agility 4.02, only a tiny gain, but he is not disappointed. The future is wide open. Just think about it, he has his father's backing and judgment points will keep coming. By 16 or 17, he will rival Rhaegar, Robert, even Ned, and perhaps catch Arthur Dayne himself. By 30, when the War of the Five Kings begins, he will be the strongest man in the 7 kingdoms, perhaps with a dragon at his command, Gallant of Murray reborn plus a dragon rider. Why should House Tarth not eventually sit the Iron Throne? His father has no idea that his son is already daring to think this far. The next morning, he studies with Maester Armin and train with Sir Godwyn as usual. Sir Godwyn is openly astonished by the leap in his technique overnight, praising his swordsmanship, his strength, his agility, all visibly improved, and his father, watching from the edge of the godswood, exchanges a quiet, knowing smile with him. After training, he takes him down to the dungeon again. Moan has prepared 2 prisoners and slips deeper into the cells the moment they arrive, professional discretion already in place. He judges the first man with a clean stroke, but the panel awards no points. When he asks his father what the man did, he tells him it was poaching. He understands at once. In this world, poaching in a lord's forest is punished by death or by the wall. But in the system's eyes, it is not really sin, only a crime invented by lords for the convenience of lords, so the holy sword refuses to count it. His father had chosen the man on purpose, an experiment he wanted to confirm. He beheads the second prisoner and the panel ticks up by 1 point. When he asks the second man's crime, his father strokes the signet on his finger with a strange expression and tells him incest. The man drove his own son out to sea so he could possess his daughter-in-law, even fathering a child with her. The young lord looks at the squat severed head on the floor. He feels disgust, also a weary amazement at how lurid human cruelty can be. Justice is served. Apparently, the system grades incest as a genuine but minor sin, awarding only 1 point. His father asks if it is effective, and he explains that it works, but only modestly. Lord Selwyn nods. They have now confirmed the rule. The Holy Sword Oathkeeper judges 1 sinner per day, and the deeper the sin, the greater the boon. It is, after all, a legendary holy sword, granted by the 7, and rewarding the punishment of true evil perfectly suits its purpose. From here on, the boy's life settles into a clean, regular rhythm. Mornings are spent studying geography and Valyrian with Maester Armin. Sir Godwyn handles afternoons with sword and bow training. Evenings are quiet. His father procures the sinners to judge. 2 years pass. They fly like wind through sails. On one bright afternoon, his father, Brienne, and he stand at Sapphire Port docks among guards and household knights, watching for the white sails marked with the blue Erin falcon. To round the headland, the vessel hails from the Vale, but the important name on board is Robert Baratheon, eldest son of House Baratheon, heading home from the Eyrie to Storm's End. The reason for this journey is seemingly small, but holds enormous historical weight. Lord Stephen Baratheon and his lady wife have given Robert a new baby brother, and that infant is named Renly Baratheon. The young lord lets that name echo in his mind, knowing exactly which knight in green armor he will eventually become. Time feels like it is tightening like a drawn bowstring. Around them, the continent of Westeros has always relied heavily on the custom of fostering Highborn sons are sent away to be raised in the halls of allied lords, sometimes as wards to seal alliances, and other times as hostages treated like family. Sometimes simply as a profound vote of confidence between two noble houses, proving that another man can raise an heir better than his own father. It is a system that often carries more weight than political marriages. Lord Stephen Baratheon sent young Robert to Jon Arryn. He trusted Jon's legendary character and judgment would forge his son better than his own court at Storm's End. Just think about that. Imagine being Jon Arryn receiving that request, knowing Stephen trusted him so completely that he handed over his future heir, the next Lord of the Stormlands. That is not mere friendship but sworn brotherhood. In turn, young Robert grows up loving Jon Arryn as much as his birth father, perhaps even more, because time spent together during those impressionable years completely reshapes a young heart. When the War of the Usurper finally erupted, the falcon, the wolf, and the stag stood together as if welded, a massive alliance forged entirely from those childhood fostering bonds that swept House Targaryen from the Iron Throne. Even after the war, with Robert crowned King, Jon Arryn was named Hand, and the king rarely ever contradicted him, their bond remaining unbroken. Years later, as Jon Arryn lay on his deathbed, he was already arranging to send his sickly son to Stannis Baratheon at Dragonstone for fostering, hoping that the grim, upright Stannis would harden the boy where indulgence had softened him. Fostering is truly the political wisdom of Westeros made flesh. The Robert the young lord is about to meet has lived at the Eyrie since age 8. He is 15. Now, meaning 7 full years under Jon Arryn's direct influence. House Baratheon and House Arryn are bound tight as iron rings. He cannot help but feel a Gallant feels a small pang of regret. If only he were 3 or 4 years older, his father could have sent him to the Eyrie too, letting him, Ned, and Robert become the 3 musketeers of the usurpation, raised together, riding together, and ready to die for one another. But he is 4 years younger than Ned and 5 years younger than Robert. Even if he had gone, the age gap would have kept them apart, and Robert would already be out chasing tavern girls while he was still doing basic letter drills with Meister Armin. It is just a pleasant fantasy. Brother, are we going to Storm's End together tomorrow too? Brienne's voice tugs him out of his drifting thoughts. She is 6 now and already almost as tall as a third grade child from his past life. She wears a light green linen dress, a small white scarf tied at the collar, and a soft brown cord at the waist. She looks well behaved, but if you study her frame under the cloth, her body is already broad and dense, far sturdier than any little girl her age has any right to be. 2 years have stretched Gallant out too. At 10, he stands a clean 5 feet and change, and at the rate he is going, he will sail past 1.8 meters in another few years, perhaps even reaching 2 meters like Brienne is destined for. Today he wears a dark gray linen shirt under a long black overcoat, a plain leather belt, and slim black trousers with Oathkeeper slung in its scabbard across his back. His features are sharpening, his eyes growing deeper, and his jawline starting to set. He rests his right hand on Brienne's shoulder, pulling her close to ask if she wants to go. She nods so hard her ponytail snaps, her eyes bright as glass. Of course he will take her. Over the last 2 years, he has done nothing but train and study. This is a chance to finally see Storm's End and meet the highborn of Westeros face to face. While they talk, the orange ship draws closer, and he can pick out 2 figures on the bow. One is tall with a massive head of dense black hair. The other is leaner with a narrower face. Robert's combat strength was truly monstrous before wine and women rotted him out. In his prime, perhaps only Arthur Dayne could match his terrifying edge. Rhaegar was the champion of the Lannisport tourney just 2 years ago, but get this, Robert still hammered him to death at the Trident. He knows he must step up in the coming years, driven to surpass even that legend. He opens his system screen, letting his eyes drink in 2 years of progress. Gallant Tarth Strength 8.7, Agility 8.9, Spirit 15.3, Mana blank. Swordsmanship 21, Archery 33, Riding 19, Common Tongue 41, Swimming 4, Valyrian 19. Bloodlines Evenstar 5, Targaryen 1, Oathkeeper Gold maxed, No Pet, Judgment. Point 0, talk about a total cheat code. His physical stats are already near adult knight level. His archery is creeping towards seasoned archer territory. In actual combat, he can easily hold his own against any veteran on Tarth. None of this came from nothing. His father quietly bought criminal slaves out of the free cities of Essos. And Gallant has judged at least 80, if not 100 of them in 2 years, by 16-20 in. Strength and agility alike will be fully possible since the next few years will bring explosive physical growth on top of the system's power, with base stats that high alongside his swordsmanship, riding, and oathkeeper. Top 5 tourney finish anywhere in Westeros would be reasonable. The Spirit climb from 12.8 to 15.3 was a small surprise since he never spent points on it. He suspects a portion was natural growth and a portion came from relentless drilling. With Meister Armin, the benefits are obvious. Gallant's memory has sharpened, his thinking is faster, and his sparring reactions are uncannily precise. Against Sir Godwyn with wooden swords, he can now last over 30 rounds without taking a hit, and believe me, Godwyn does not hold back. When Gallant finally has surplus points to spare, he will pour them into Spirit too, because nervous reaction speed has a way of deciding duels. Shouts to drop anchor, hold tight, and throw the rope's ring out. Sailors and dock hands call across the gap, and Gallant can finally see the two boys clearly. One has a lined face and sharp features, light brown curls, and a steady gaze tinged with reserve. The other is tall and thickly built, handsome and well-proportioned, with deep blue eyes and a heavy fall of black hair, with a careless smile that always seems to be lurking on his lips. The tall one is unmistakably Robert, and the lean one he recognizes at a glance. Eddard Stark, ward of Jon Arryn, stands alongside Robert. The two of them are inseparable as brothers, since Robert is getting a new little brother, of course. Ned has come along to help carry the joy back to Storm's End. Looking at 14-year-old Ned, Gallant feels a strange ripple. Honestly, he is much younger than the Ned he remembers from the screen of his old life, even more boyish than the actor who once played Robb, and yet that stern, unsmiling face is already there. Exactly the face that lets Gallant confirm his identity before he says a word. Lord Selwyn, it has been too long. How have you been? Robert is shouting from the deck before the gangplank is even down, and Selwyn shouts back just as heartily. That Robert looks splendid, having grown into a man. The last time his father saw him, he was a tall 12-year-old, still rounded with boy fat. Now at 15 he is already 6.5 feet tall and built like a young oak. As the lines are tied off, Robert simply leaps from the deck onto the pier, landing on the boards with a heavy thud that announces his strength as effectively as any introduction. Selwyn gives a small approving nod. Jon Arryn has clearly raised him well in body and bearing. Robert grins, claps a hand to his chest, and then waves Ned forward. Lord Selwyn, this is my good brother Ned, second son of Lord Stark of the North. Ned steps forward and bows his head a precise, measured fraction, voice low and even, calling Selwyn my lord. Selwyn returns the courtesy and asks after Lord Rickard's health, deliberately echoing the nickname Ned to plant a familiar tone, and Ned answers that his father is well, kept too busy by the North to travel south. Selwyn nods, since Starks rarely leave the North, so this is no surprise. Robert, it has been a while, Gallant says, stepping forward. At last, House Tarth and House Baratheon have intermarried for generations, and they are distantly related, so they know each other. Gallant, long time no see. Even up at the Eyrie, I have heard your name 100 times these past 2 years. Robert says with a booming laugh, and slaps a hand on Gallant's shoulder, his eyes already pulled toward the hilt of Oathkeeper rising over Gallant's back. He shrugs helplessly. The story has spread far. Many nobles still believe House Tarth invented the legend, but anyone in the Stormlands or along the eastern coast has already accepted it as real because he has never gone to any particular trouble to hide Oathkeeper. He only uses it for executions, anyone curious enough to ask is told the truth. Gallant, is this the holy sword? Can you draw it? Robert demands to see the blade, his patience already wearing incredibly thin. Gallant shakes his head with a smile. Robert is just as impulsive as the rumors suggested. Barely off the ship, Robert is already begging for the blade, so Gallant turns to Ned instead. He greets Ned with polite formality, introducing himself, and Ned answers with a quiet greeting. Ned offers a small, awkward smile that looks completely out of place on his usually stoic face. Gallant is secretly amused. Meanwhile, Robert keeps pestering them, slinging his heavy arm over Gallant's shoulder. Despite their height difference, Robert's eyes remain locked onto the pommel of the sword. He stares at the inscription circling the blue gem of Oathkeeper, but Gallant tells him to wait. Drawing a legendary weapon right on the docks would only bring a scolding for poor hospitality. Gallant's father nods in quiet approval of his son's proper manners. Servants bring out horses, and the group rides the short distance toward the castle. Robert points out the beautiful scenery with pride, while Ned nods along silently. He is clearly impressed. Honestly, who wouldn't be? Tarth is stunningly beautiful. It is a massive step up from the cold, rough northern country Ned is used to. In the Great Hall, maids have already prepared a massive welcoming feast. Long tables are decorated with flowers and candles, alongside the traditional bread and salt. The steward Claude presents the offering, and both lords step forward to partake. Ned takes a small, careful bite of bread and gently dips a finger into the salt. Robert, however, grabs a giant piece, taking a savage bite and scooping up salt. He washes the massive mouthful down with a heavy cup of fresh milk. Within 2 quick bites, half the loaf vanishes, making Gallant's father laugh softly. He clearly approves of Robert's blunt, straightforward nature and pats his shoulder. He then sends the young lords upstairs to wash and change before the actual banquet. Once they leave, Lord Tarth turns to Gallant, asking for his honest assessment. Gallant notes that Robert is bold and rough, yet remarkably shrewd when it counts. His future achievements will be massive, Gallant says, but Ned is a different story. Ned is simply too honorable and straightforward to survive the dirty game of politics. If he ever crosses a true schemer, he will be eaten alive, and his father nods. Lord Tarth advises his son to keep their future liege lord incredibly close. Gallant agrees, knowing Robert is destined for far more than just Storm's End. This man is destined to sit on the Iron Throne, a path already practically set in stone. Out of all the great houses remaining in the 7 kingdoms, only one stands high enough. House Baratheon holds the key, and only Robert carries the royal blood of the dragons. He is the only candidate the other noble houses could ever bring themselves to accept. Placing Ned or Tywin on the throne would only plunge the land into endless war. Gallant's plan is simple, align firmly with House Baratheon and wait. He must build his power quietly during the upcoming War of the Usurper. Currently, House Tarth is far too small, lacking both the reputation and military strength. To make a move, Gallant needs to build his foundation slowly, step by step. Since Robert is generous and they are kin, loyal service will surely yield massive rewards. The War of the 5 Kings will be his ultimate stage. By then, he will be in his early 30s, reaching his physical and martial peak. His influence will be massive, and he might even have a dragon. Whether he claims the throne himself or rules through a puppet, both paths will be open. Footsteps approach. Footsteps on the stairs cut him off. Robert and Ned, freshly washed, walk down together. Robert eagerly asks Gallant to show him the sword, his eyes already full of greed. Ned glances over as well, his intense curiosity slightly better hidden, but still incredibly real. He has heard about Oathkeeper from Jon, Aaron, and Robert for several months now. He desperately wants to compare it to his own family greatsword, Ice. Gallant agrees to show them, but warns them that trying to hold it is a terrible idea. He unfastens Oathkeeper, placing the scabbard on the table before drawing the blade. The crisp, ringing sound of the steel coming free echoes loudly throughout the silent hall. A sudden flash of clear, almost liquid green light flickers brightly across their shocked faces. They stop dead, the beautiful blade emits a pale green glow. The flawless metal flows seamlessly, looking like running water or a burning flame. A faint, shimmering orange line runs along the edge, as if dawn itself was forged inside. The understated crossguard and ivory hilt act as the perfect noble complement. It is incredibly noble, leaving Robert with his mouth hanging wide open. Ned holds his breath, both of them completely captivated by the view. Neither man can look away. In an age where magic has supposedly vanished, this is unbelievable. Seeing Oathkeeper is basically like witnessing real magic with your own eyes. Robert even begins to wonder if the Seven, whom he never worshipped, actually exist. He eagerly asks Gallant if he can try holding the sword himself. Ned, normally rigid, lets a quiet flicker of intense desire cross his face too. They both desperately want to grip the hilt, but Gallant shakes his head with a smile. He simply repeats his warning once, letting the weapon rest quietly on the table. They lean in close, and the longer they look, the more naked the envy grows in their eyes. Robert is suddenly painfully conscious that his own fine steel sword looks completely plain. The custom blade Aaron bought him last year is nothing compared to this. Ned realizes ice looks entirely plain beside it. Robert, staying completely true to his impulsive nature, simply cannot resist. His greedy fingers actually close around the hilt, but he immediately pulls back with a gasp. He yanks them back with a painful hiss, sucking cold air through his teeth. A charred red mark has suddenly appeared across his fingertips, looking like a fresh burn. He is lucky he was fast, though Gallant cannot help but shake his head. Warnings are wasted on him. Robert scratches his head in total embarrassment. The rumor that no other hand can hold this holy sword is absolutely true. Ned looks at Robert and decides against trying. He asks Gallant how he managed to find such an incredible weapon. Is this really the legendary, holy sword the maiden gave to Gallant of Myr? Robert asks while nursing his fingers. Gallant shrugs, claiming he found it entirely by accident. He does not care if the Seven made it. It is sharp, and that is enough. Robert smacks his lips with a mixed expression, cursing about how deeply jealous he is. Ned quietly studies the blade, noting that this does not look like standard Valyrian steel. Gallant nods in agreement, because Ned is absolutely correct about that distinction. Valyrian steel is dark with a rippled water pattern, but Oathkeeper glows with an otherworldly blue-green light. To Gallant, this weapon looks like a top-tier glowing item from some video game. The system itself rates it as gold, far above standard Valyrian steel. This implies there must be blue and purple ratings somewhere above them. Sir Godwyn, Gallant tells them, says his sword is sharper than Arthur Dayne's Dawn. Both of them fall completely silent and exchange a stunned look. Forget Dawn, neither boy even owns any Valyrian steel. House Baratheon is too young to have an inherited Valyrian blade. House Stark has ice, but it belongs to Lord Rickard and will pass to Brandon, never to Ned. They are at the precise age of 14 and 15, when boys hunger most for legendary weapons. Knowing about Oathkeeper has just kicked them in the chest. Just how sharp is it? Robert asks. It cuts through plate armor with one stroke, Gallant tells him. They both widen their eyes. Robert's expression turns serious and disbelieving. Gallant is not joking. 2 years ago at strength 3.12 he could nearly cleave plate. At 8.76 he can shear it one-handed if he swings full force. After lunch he promises to show them. Robert cannot wait to see it. Lunch is sumptuous. Roast wild boar with honey and clove, crispy roasted venison leg drizzled with blackberry sauce, creamy stewed mushrooms, and onions, salted herring with sour cream, roasted pigeon stuffed with apples, and raisins, and a cheese platter with honeycomb. The wine is just as varied. Strong Dornish red, golden arbor wine, Troche pear brandy, Mirish green mead. Dark Valentine beer, Robert, only 15, has already started drinking and praises. Every cup of Tarth hospitality, in the middle of the meal, he lifts his goblet. Lord Selwyn, besides visiting you and Gallant and Brienne, my father bid me to invite you to Storm's End tomorrow to my brother Renly's name day, if you do not come, my father will surely scold me. Gallant nods inwardly, so Robert is rough but highly attentive to detail. His pleasantries are flawless and his emotional intelligence is high. In the original, he is mostly playing the fool because that is the role that suits him, but he understands everything underneath. Ned, by contrast, really is what he looks like, simple and led in circles by everyone. His father raises his cup with a smile, saying he will gladly bring Gallant and Brienne to Storm's End, and the two empty their cups together. Gallant drinks a little wine with them. The rule about minors not drinking is nonsense in this world, and besides, his legendary bloodline and reinforced physique seem to give him a remarkable tolerance. He could probably drink 3 Roberts under the table. After lunch, they rest. As dusk settles, Robert hauls Ned out to find Gallant again, demanding the demonstration. He takes them, plus a few attendants, to the Godswood with one casual sweep. Oathkeeper cuts a waist-thick deadwood log clean through. The cut is so smooth, the wood barely creaks before it falls. Robert and Ned stare as if at a ghost. In the eerie, swinging branches and long grass, they have never seen a single cut do this. Gallant walks them up to the great training post where he first tested the sword, where the slanted cuts already mark the wood. They go cold looking at it. A one-handed slanted slash takes a millstone-sized chunk out of the post. Wood splits along its grain with a slick splitting sound, and the chunk slides down into the grass, kicking up dark mud. Both of them swallow hard. Suddenly, the claim about plate armor does not seem like boasting. Robert's breathing turns ragged at the thought of what Oathkeeper would do in a real duel or on a battlefield, and this secondary thought that Gallant is his future vassal rolls through him like a heavy barrel. He offers some chilled wine. How about it, he asks. Need to see it on armor. Robert smiles bitterly and points across the grass to rusted plate armor strapped to a nearby training dummy. It is scored with several huge gashes. That is the armor, he explains. That is the armor Sir Godwyn took off 2 years ago for him to practice on. Been baking in the rain ever since. Ned hurries over to look more closely. He finds the cuts unlike anything he has ever seen a weapon do. Ned shudders at the thought of being inside that armor when those cuts landed. Gallant casually walks forward, noting it has been a while since his last test. Gripping Oathkeeper one-handed, he stops just 2 or 3 meters from the dummy. He flicks his wrist, reverses his grip, and slashes diagonally upward. A sharp clang of metal and a shower of sparks erupt as the breastplate shatters. The front and back are sliced clean in two, the wooden dummy parts. Company instantly. Talk about terrifying power. Robert and Ned suck in a breath. Together, Ned is stunned. Could this really have been forged by mortal hands? Robert calls him a brat, predicting he will be the next sword of the morning. He claps Gallant on the shoulder. The boy demurs modestly, but Robert only flashes a sudden mischievous grin. Hey Ned, he says, how about we give Gallant some pointers on his swordsmanship with wooden swords? Ned twitches his lips, clearly seeing through the playful bullying his friend is proposing. Before Ned can even object, Gallant is already smiling, saying sure. He was worrying about having no sparring partners. He sheathes Oathkeeper, sets it aside, and grabs a battered wooden training sword to face Robert across the grass. Ned, shaking his head with a sigh, accepts the role of referee. Begin, Robert calls out, sword extended. Gallant reviews his stats: strength 8.76, agility 8.9, spirit 15.3. Robert has him badly beat on raw strength, but Gallant has a major spiritual edge. This is a real fight. Robert presses forward immediately, his swing incredibly fast. The wooden sword whistles toward his chest. Gallant plants his feet and parries. Cleanly, though the heavy impact sends a tremor up his arms, he does not push back. Instead, he takes a half step back and braces. The second crash is even heavier, sending dust and wood shavings flying off both training. Swords, his palms go numb as he retreats further to buy time, marveling. Those two strikes already match Sir Godwin's strength as an adult knight. Sir Godwin is in his peak 30s, while young Robert is only 15 years old. He is clearly not at full strength, yet Robert is equally surprised by this. His peers cannot withstand half his force, and even Ned's hands tremble after training. Yet a 10-year-old Gallant is taking it without any visible strain. Robert grins, intrigued, and tightens his grip with both hands, stepping in with steadier feet to turn his power up to 70%. The next strikes hammer down, so heavily that the air hums, and Gallant feels his hands going almost dead. The grass shivers, his feet slide back half a step against his will, and a final fierce stroke chips a small chunk out of where their swords meet. Gallant retreats 2 paces, shakes out his left hand, and looks up. According to the system, Robert's strength is already 15 or higher, and he is only 15. Robert is only 15. In another 4 or 5 years, when he turns 20, what kind of monster will he be? No wonder he was destined to crush Rieger at the trident. Robert suddenly stops, apologizing to Galladon and asking if he is all right. He scratches his head, only meaning to tease the younger boy, not brutalize him, but the result surprises him even more because despite retreating, Galladon never lost his footing. The moment a flaw appeared, the boy instantly closed the distance to reset. Such strength, flawless footwork, and perfect combat intuition should never belong to a 10-year-old. Galladon insists he is fine and demands they go all out. He wants no holding back. Both Robert and Ned go a little pale, and Ned actually advises against it, warning his friend that bones might get broken. Galladon just smiles and tells them not to worry. He knows exactly what he is doing, pushing off the ground to charge. After 2 rounds of testing, he has a solid read on Robert. That raw power is on another level, but real swordplay is not just about brute strength. Otherwise, why would technique even exist? Galladon drives a lightning-fast diagonal swing toward his shoulder. Robert is startled, raising his wooden sword to parry, and just as they clash, Galladon twists mid-motion, with footwork as light as a flying swallow. He converts the strike into an upward slash toward the neck. Robert's pupils contract as his heart rate spikes. His defense flies up, but his stance is completely broken, his balance lost. A faint smirk plays on Galladon's lips as he closes the gap, unleashing 2 rapid strikes at the older boy's abdomen. Each blow rings off his parry. Robert's eyes widen, shocked by the swordplay of a 10-year-old. He could easily use his massive weight to shove the kid down, but that would be obvious bullying, and his pride simply won't allow it. He retreats 3 steps, exhaling as his leg muscles tense like iron, before exploding forward with a massive downward smash, carrying the full thunderous weight of his strength. The wooden blade tears through the air with a low hum, aiming straight at the defense across Galladon's chest. It is a calculated choice designed to shatter his guard and let the residual force thump against his chest, causing pain but breaking no bones. The perfect face saving compromise of a stronger fighter who has no desire to maim a younger opponent. Galladon sees everything. With a spirit stat of 15.3, his reaction speed is sharper than anyone else's, making the strike unfold before his eyes as if the world had slowed. He instantly weighs 3 choices: sidestep, parry, or close counter, choosing the absolute riskiest. Refusing to retreat, he accelerates forward into the wind of that blade. His smaller height and build are far inferior to Robert's, meaning a direct clash would be a guaranteed loss, but strength and weakness are never absolute. Timing is everything, and Robert's biggest mistake was holding back. By aiming for the chest instead of locking his movement, he leaves a gap to slip right through. Galladon's mind remains icy cool while his blood runs scorching hot. Just as the wooden sword begins its descent, he leans back almost 90 degrees, dropping down to his knees to ride his momentum into a smooth slide across the grass. Robert's blade sweeps over the boy's head with a sharp whoosh, hitting nothing but air. The follow-through that was meant for his chest connects with nothing, Robert's center of gravity is ruined. He can neither pull back nor dodge as Gallant slides right past him. On his knees, bringing his wooden blade across horizontally to land a decisive tap on the older boy's left flank. With a sharp, sudden crack, Robert completely freezes. His tall frame stiffens like a statue, his sword locked mid-swing after a complete miss. He looks down, he stares at the mark, his mouth slightly open. The mind of Ned goes blank. On the sidelines, his referee stick slips away. The rod clatters onto his foot. He does not even feel it. He stares, his stoicism is shattered, mouth agape and eyes wide open. Robert finally turns his head toward Gallant, his throat bobbing as he gulps. Gallant rises slowly. He brushes grass off his knees and flicks his sword. He tells Robert that he won. Robert just stands there, opening his mouth. To speak, hesitates, and finally lets out a dry, raspy laugh. Gallant, you little brat, you are amazing. He stabs his sword down. The wood hits with a thud. Robert looks at Gallant with mixed emotions. He clearly wonders what this kid will become at 15 years old. If he is already like this at 10, Ned steps over, completely shocked. Ned knows Robert was fighting at full strength, but that move was unpredictable. On a real battlefield, that attack would have just hit plate armor. It would have done nothing, but in a spar, it was completely decisive. Ned wonders about his own chances. Gallant tells Robert it was pure luck. Inwardly, Gallant knows that without his sword Oathkeeper, he would lose a duel. But with it, victory is guaranteed. Robert claps him on the shoulder hard. The blow makes Gallant wince. Robert vows to train more and behave. Seriously, how can he show his face if he loses to 10-year-olds? Losing actually does Robert a favor, serving as a needed wake-up call. His pride is hurt, but Gallant is the proud heir of Tarth. Gallant is the future vassal and solid little brother of Robert. Why be unhappy? Besides, Jaime Lannister is going to be completely insufferable in a few years. When that happens, Robert can easily send Gallant to humble him. Robert tells Ned to come over, already eager to get revenge by proxy. Robert can read his level clearly now. The strength of Gallant is just below Ned. His speed and agility match those of Ned perfectly, and his technique is solid. His combat intuition even exceeds that of Ned. It looks like an even match. Since Gallant holds the edge, Robert is not letting his friend escape this. The lips of Ned twitch. At 14, he is expected to win this easily. If he loses, his confidence will shatter, just like the confidence of Robert. But the grin from Robert and the calm stare of Gallant leave no exit. With a sigh, Ned pulls the wooden sword from the dirt. The pressure on Gallant drops instantly. Ned lacks the insane, raw strength of Robert. House Stark almost certainly has a legendary wolf bloodline of its own. But Ned has not awakened it, leaving him with average physical talent. In the original story, Ned received the finest tutoring at Winterfell. He also trained in the Vale under Jon Arryn, getting premier education. Despite this peak training, the actual combat record of Ned remained quite mediocre. At the Tower of Joy, he led 7 northern warriors into battle. They fought 3 elite Kingsguard, and almost all the men of Ned died. Without the timely knife strike of Howland Reed, all of them would have perished. Fallen, by then, Arthur Dayne was practically seeking his own death. He lost his will to fight after hearing about Aerys and Rhaegar, later ambushed by Jaime Lannister in King's Landing. Ned performed even worse, outnumbered even though he had the larger party at the tower, only to end up crippled in one leg and dragged into the dungeons of the Red Keep in a proper power. Ranking Arthur Dayne and a young Barristan would be S-tier legendary. Swordsmen, while Prime Robert, Prime Jaime, the Mountain, and the Red Viper would be A+, and Brienne, the Hound, and Bronn standard A. Ned honestly barely an A-, so he is not nervous. The wooden swords meet with A sharp crack sending the impact rolling back through his arm. He confirms his reading. Ned is stronger than him, but only slightly, with his own strength. At 8.76, Ned's is around 9.2, quite reasonable. His physical talent is average, and he is only 14, without long-term training and proper noble nutrition. Ned would have ended up nameless, perhaps even tragically, given his temperament. Crack, crack, crack. Within a few breaths, their swords have met 8 times. Ned's expression grows increasingly solemn while the boy's remains perfectly composed. Ned feels he cannot break through. The boy seems to anticipate every strike. Sparring with Robert was actually much less exasperating because Robert relied on brute force with loose, obvious openings. Ned has agility close to his, but less flexible footwork to outmaneuver him. He has steady swordsmanship and solid strength to back it up. Ned cannot find a gap, and every heavy swing comes back from the boy's hands without a tremor. Ned starts to sweat, suddenly understanding what Robert went through. Surely both Baratheon and Stark cannot fall to a 10-year-old in one afternoon. Talk about an embarrassing blowout. After a few more frustrated probes, Ned decides to gamble. His only edge is strength, so he pivots, spinning his body in a full 360-degree rotation while moving forward, gripping two-handed, and channeling all his force into a single overhead chop, coming down with his entire weight. It is an impressive strike for a 14-year-old. Even the boy cannot block it head-on without losing. The heavy force would drive his own sword into his shoulder, but he was waiting for this. Ned is not easy to hit either. His style is too steady, unlike Robert's recklessness, and the boy's reach and strength are smaller. A direct break-in is unlikely, so when Ned commits to the gamble, the opening he wanted finally arrives. The boy's eyes narrow as Ned's body rotates into the strike. He is already shifting his weight from both feet to the right. Alone, as the wooden sword chops down, he sidesteps right with one nimble move, sending Ned's blade into empty air. His balance shatters, leaving a wide opening, and the boy swings his wooden sword hard into Ned's shoulder and back. Smack, wood on flesh. Ned freezes completely before he can even process the loss. Robert's mocking laughter is already tearing across the Godswood, openly delighted, and that relief pulls Ned out of his daze. Feeling the dull pain across his upper arm, he looks at the boy with a grimace. Robert yells that Ned lost, striding forward with a massive laugh, nearly dropping his teeth as he slaps Ned's shoulder. Robert is absolutely thrilled. He figured he would never live it down, that Ned would nail him to a column of shame. But now that Ned has lost too, his fear evaporates. Both losing means neither can mock the other, as long as the secret stays among the three of them. Dignity is preserved. At worst, Robert thinks of Gallant as his big brother. He will surely show him some respect. Robert's wild laughter is half schadenfreude and half pure relief. Ned, meanwhile, is burning under that laughter. They have both just lost to a 10-year-old. How does Robert have the nerve to laugh this loud? Ned resists, rolling his eyes, and turns to Gallant. Gallant, you won. I am no match for you, Ned says sincerely. Gallant shakes his head and tells him it was luck, and his last strike nearly grazed his shoulder, which is technically true, though Gallant knows that even if they tried again, the result would be the same. The danger was minor, planned ahead. Ned shakes his head. He can read the truth, too, but his thoughts are no longer about this match. Ned is 14, Gallant is 10 and can already defeat him by the time Gallant reaches his age. What speed and technique will Gallant have? Could Ned at 18 possibly catch up? He realizes the answer is a flat no. Forget himself, even Robert will be overwhelmed in a few years. At 10, Gallant matches Ned's strength, meaning he has prodigious natural strength like Robert. On top of that, he has the technique Robert lacks. He will plainly become the next sword of the morning. Ned has no chance against him. He yields with a quiet sigh. Back at the area, he, like Robert, was considered the best of his generation, and that confidence is now dented hard. he resolves to train harder when he goes back. Gallant, do not be modest. We are so much older and you beat us. I cannot. Imagine what you will be in a few years, Robert says, slinging an arm around Gallant's neck. Ned nods seriously. The most terrifying part is that Gallant has both the talent and the holy sword. Who could possibly beat that? Gallant scratches his head. Embarrassed, he has the merit to accept their compliments openly, but the Chinese core of his old life still wants him to be humble. Come, Robert, Ned, let me take you to the sea, Gallant tells them. The glass sea of Tarth is the most beautiful coast on the eastern shore of Westeros. They climb down the rocky path from the Godswood, passing through grass and stone, and within a few minutes reach a private beach belonging to House Tarth. It is only 5 minutes from Evenfall Hall, and the scenery is stunning with transparently azure water, 2 cliffs curving out to sea like the wings of an eagle shelter the bay with only a small mouth open to the tide. Large rocks rise above and below the water, ancient trees casting deep shade. Colorful fish dart through the rocks as seagulls call. Far off, there are no waves in this sheltered cove, the water glass clear. Under the sun, when Brienne plays at the sea, she comes here, and when Gallant wants to rest from training, he comes too. In his old life, the videos he saw of Sonya and Phuket or Hawaii never matched the calm of this little beach. Robert is exclaiming in awe, wow, Tarth has a place like this. Why have you never brought me here? Gallant tells him they only ever brought him in passing, and Robert laughs and starts pulling off his boots. Ned takes off his shoes more carefully and folds his shirt with neat fingers as he wades in, the shock of clear, cool water rising past his ankles, calves, and knees makes his eyes brighten. The sea. The freezing cold of the north kills, and the sea at Gold Town is murky and rough. Tarth's waters refresh the spirit instantly, prompting Gallant to wade right in. Robert leaps off a high rock with a massive splash, while Ned enters slowly. Methodically, after floating for a few minutes, Robert grins and lunges straight at Gallant with a huge 2-handed slap across the water, sending a massive wave straight into his face. Gallant fights back, but Robert's height, reach, and broad palms let him easily dominate. Splashing him 3-1, the stray spray flies wide, catching the reserved Ned, who wipes with annoyed fingers. Soon, the 3 of them are splashing each other wildly. Eventually, tired of being outsplashed, Gallant dives under. His swimming skill is already at 4%, far above his peers, easily rivaling seasoned fishermen. He slips smoothly down to the seabed, reaching through the beautiful coral reefs to He grabs a lobster, surfacing to find Robert still playfully hammering away at Ned. With a mischievous grin, Gallant tosses the freshly caught lobster directly across the water. And it lands right on the back of Robert's neck, cold, hard, slick, and wet. Robert slaps at it on instinct, yelping as the falling lobster pinches him. Shaking it off before it grips tighter, he spins around and spots Gallant floating nearby. With a massive grin, playfully calling him a little rascal. Once they are finally worn out, they float quietly in the shade of the trees, fully relaxed. Gallant breaks the silence, asking Robert and Ned if they want some grilled fish. Robert wonders how they will catch them, and Gallant simply tells him they will shoot them. Since the shallow water is packed with rockfish, a good bowman can easily pick them off. Gallant proposes a contest, immediately sparking Robert's interest and waking his own competitive streak. He is ready for some sweet payback now, and honestly, who wouldn't be? As the sun sinks westward, several campfires are lit along the beach. Gallant, Ned, and Robert sit around one fire, while guards tend to others nearby. They roast the fish they shot earlier, tossing the smaller ones straight into the flames. Only the large, meaty ones are saved, skewered carefully on thick wooden branches. Their haul is incredibly generous, and more than half of the fish belong to Gallant. Ned secured a small portion of fish, Robert only 2. Robert is decent with a sword, but his archery skills are completely mediocre. Drinking from a wine jug, Robert asks Gallant why his aim is so good. Gallant turns his fish over the hot embers and smiles, attributing it to pure talent. He does not bother playing it down because his archery talent is genuinely exceptional. Without spending a single skill point, he has practiced naturally up to 33%. In just a few more years, his skill should easily reach 50%. Even Sir Godwin marvels at his rapid progress, predicting a future tournament victory. To Gallant, archery is mostly just fun. After all, Westerosi knights wear heavy plate armor, meaning arrows usually take out the common foot soldiers rather than lords. Still, the clean release of a bowstring and the thud of the shaft are deeply satisfying. Ned quietly tells Gallant that he will absolutely become a tournament champion one day. Gallant just laughs at the certainty in Ned's voice, knowing it is still early. But deep down, he knows his growth curve will make him stand above all Westeros. A tournament crown will simply be one minor achievement along his legendary path. Robert speaks up, mentioning that Gallant missed the tournament at Lannisport 2 years ago. He takes another swig, noting that he and Ned both attended. Prince Rhaegar is truly formidable. He carried himself with absolute grace. He dominated the lists, but the cold mood of the realm has settled since. Ned recalls the tension at the Eyrie when news arrived from the capital. Then their conversation naturally drifts back to the defiance of Duskendale. The memory still chills the air. Lord Dennis Darkland defied the crown. He denied new tax rights and refused the king a seat at his table. He held him hostage when Aerys arrived in person to settle the matter. For 6 long months, Aerys lived in captivity, and the experience completely broke him. He was never the same, but Barristan Selmy infiltrated the keep. He rescued the king alone and struck down the defiant rebel. That legendary rescue earned him the title of the Bold, but the king returned broken. He was completely paranoid, terrified of fire, and trusting of absolutely nothing. A hollow shell, Robert speaks bitterly of how Aerys has changed. The royal burnings grow more frequent with each passing year. Nobles whisper about the mad king. Meanwhile, Rhaegar has fled the capital. He left King's Landing for Dragonstone with Ellie and the children. Simply to escape his father's mad gaze, the rift is clear. This massive division sends dangerous undercurrents surging through the realm. Listening quietly, the young heir maintains a calm expression, but his mind is racing. The timeline is unfolding exactly as he remembers. Duskendale has passed, the king's madness is set, Rhaegar is in retreat. Steffon Baratheon lives, but will soon sail across the narrow sea. A doomed search for a bride will end his life in Shipbreaker Bay. The war of the usurper is no longer abstract, it is gathering. Robert and Ned are blind to it, but he sees the shape of the storm. He reminds himself there is time, years to raise attributes, years to build bloodlines. Years to raise Brienne properly, years to marry Helena and secure House Hightower. To secure their stance, he tears off more fish and chews slowly. Under the dimming sky, they prepare. The next morning, they set sail for Storm's End. They board the flagship with Robert and Ned, young Brienne at his side. Her hair is tied back cleanly. Before they left Evenfall, he visited the workshop. He wanted a special product for this journey, something far beyond ordinary polite gifts. An actual product, over the past 2 years, alongside his training. He used knowledge from his past life to introduce new creations. 2 small inventions for House Tarth, the toothbrush and the paste. The brush uses simple boar bristles bound to a polished bone. The paste consists of chalk powder, a bit of salt, and mint. He added mint and clove for freshness, using a simple binder to hold it. Crude by his standards, but absolutely revolutionary to Westeros. Nobles here use rough cloth and ash, commoners do nothing. Within a single season, the entire Tarth household stopped losing teeth to rot. Within a year, travelers from Storm's End were buying boxes. His father was quietly patient with him, treating it as a strange hobby. Until the gold dragons started rolling in, and now he understands. Now he truly understands the worth of House Tarth's trade. House Tarth's coffers are filling fast. This is not just regular trade, it is a true monopoly. They own an addictive product. Now, Lord Selwyn is talking with House Heitor. He wants to distribute their goods across the Reach using Heitor merchant networks. These traders can move toothbrushes and toothpaste through the Reach and the Westerlands. These goods will reach Dorne in volumes Tarth's own ships could never carry. This alliance will turn their simple hygiene goods into a literal mountain of gold. Suddenly, a marriage alliance between Tarth and Heitor makes perfect commercial sense. Even without the massive political benefits, the young heir has already prepared the cargo. He packs boxes of toothbrushes and toothpaste as gifts for young Renly's name day. Selwyn wants to impress House Baratheon. The Tyrells and Heitors are there too. They will attend. Lord Leighton himself is leading their party on this crucial voyage. The journey is short. Storm's End soon rises majestically from the coastal cliffs. Its curved walls look completely seamless, Brandon the Builder's legendary work. Young Brienne presses against the ship's rail, her eyes gleaming with absolute wonder. Meister Armin's old stories come alive as Robert Baratheon points out the sights. He shows her the battery of trebuchets and the seabirds nesting on the cliffs. Brienne nods eagerly. They quickly disembark and ride up toward the massive gates. There stands Lord Stephen Baratheon, broad and laughing, with his wife by his side. A wet nurse holds a swaddled baby, infant Renly, with his dark hair showing. Lord Selwyn presents their official gifts, while Gallant brings out his own cargo. Stephen Baratheon laughs warmly and pulls all three of them into a massive embrace. The great hall is filled with banners and heavy trestle tables overflowing with food. The names introduced to Gallant are familiar, a complete roll call of his past. He meets Lord Leighton Heitor, along with his daughters, Helena and young Linus. Mace Tyrell stands slack-jawed beside his formidable mother, alongside Yohn Royce. Matthijs Rowan and dozens of minor Stormland lords fill the hall. Gallant remains poised. He keeps his composure. At only 10 years old, he must play his part. He needs to be charming and graceful rather than authoritative, walking that line perfectly. 11-year-old Helena is the only Heitor face that truly catches his personal interest. She has pale silver-gold hair and a steady, mature gaze, free of fake noble vanity. Lord Selwyn has spent months planning a future match between the two of them. He has been exchanging private letters with Lord Leighton regarding a formal betrothal. They will formalize it at 14, then marry after the usurper's war. The timing is impeccable. Gallant has no objections to this arrangement. His modern views on romance mean nothing in a world ruled by strategic marriages. His father has secured him a beautiful, wealthy, and remarkably well-mannered Heitor lady. He would have to be an absolute fool to reject her for modern fairy tales. He walks Brienne over to introduce her, and Helena greets his sister with genuine warmth. He carefully studies Helena's expressions as they talk, looking for any hidden tells. No haughty pride, there is absolutely no feigned interest or superficial brightness. Instead, she shows a sweet shyness and a sincere love for books and nature. Every time their eyes lock, a faint, adorable blush creeps up to her ears. Seeing her react so genuinely to his laughter is worth more than any political gain. In his previous life, they used to say a young girl's blush is priceless. Then her little 7-year-old sister, Linus, suddenly latches onto his arm. She clings to his hand like a spoiled little creature, refusing to let go. She weeps openly when their families finally part the very next morning. Brienne finds the whole thing hilarious, but Galladon knows Lynn will be trouble. She is undeniably pretty already, making it almost impossible to truly dislike her. That night, his father and Lord Leighton hold a long, private discussion. By morning, the betrothal is settled. At 14, there will be a formal ceremony. A formal engagement will take place, and the marriage will follow later on. Lord Leighton is thrilled to gain a son-in-law who wields a holy sword. He is reputedly the strongest boy of his generation, and his father is delighted. To bind the second oldest house in Westeros to Tarth's rising fortunes. The toothbrush and toothpaste trade deal is signed alongside their marriage pact. will distribute the products exclusively into the Reach and the Westerlands. Joined by trade and blood, these two powerhouse families are basically untouchable. The next day, they sail back home as Tarth returns to its usual rhythm. Helena is only 11 and Galladon is 10. Neither is ready for romance yet. Friendly letters are enough for now, as a good first impression was made. Many things happen over the next 4 years throughout the Stormlands. The biggest shock is the sudden death of Duke Stefan Baratheon and his wife. A few months after Renly's name day, King Aerys acts out of paranoia. He suddenly decrees that Stefan Baratheon must sail across the sea. He must search the free cities of Essos for a suitable bride for Rhaegar. She must have silver hair, purple eyes, and the purest Valyrian blood. Having fought together in the War of the Ninepenny Kings as young men, Stefan agrees to the mission out of deep loyalty to the king. He sets sail across the narrow sea with his wife, Cassana Estant. They find no Valyrian girl, on their return just as Storm's End is in sight. Their ship strikes the jagged rocks of Shipbreaker Bay, killing everyone aboard. This tragic accident strikes like a sudden thunderbolt across the Stormlands. Robert, far away at the Eyrie, is instantly consumed by fury and grief. He curses King Aerys aloud in front of Lord Jon Arryn, who calms him down. Lord Arryn brings him directly to Storm's End to be named the new Duke. Restrained by Jon Arryn's calm guidance, Robert does not openly rebel just yet. But his hatred is buried deep, festering inside, and trust me, it never fades. And Cassana were murdered by King Aerys. That hatred will soon target Rhaegar, since his parents died searching for a bride for the crown prince. Seeing how young and hot-headed Robert is, Jon Arryn takes action. He brings him back to the Eyrie for more years of strict guidance, hoping to train him as a competent duke and slowly soothe his burning rage. Galladon attends the funeral with his father and Brienne, trying to comfort Robert. But words are useless. The bodies of Duke Stefan and Cassana were finally found. After a week of searching, bloated and decomposed beyond all recognition. Robert almost breaks at the sight. Such deep, traumatic hatred never fades. Later, when Rhaegar steals Lyanna Stark, the final pieces fall into place. The perceived murder of his parents and the theft of his future wife. Putting himself in Robert's shoes, Galladon knows he would never forgive House Targaryen. Either he would gladly chop every single earthworm in the Targaryen fields in half and shake every egg yolk until it scrambled, spurred by his own martial example and by the tragic death of his parents. Robert at the Eyrie stops slacking and starts training with a terrifying new ferocity, hoping to one day claim his revenge. In King's Landing, things grow far worse. King Aerys' mind fractures further, his executions multiply rapidly, and from the Wall to Dorne, both commoners and lords begin secretly calling him the Mad King. Under immense pressure, Prince Rhaegar has now married Elia Martell of Dorne and quietly retreated to Dragonstone with her to escape his father's paranoia. Yet King Aerys remains hostile, refusing to embrace Rhaegar's children and refuses to attend the name days of his granddaughter Rhaenys and his grandson Aegon. The rift between father and son remains an open wound, visible to the entire realm. As this royal conflict deepens and the king's madness spreads, dark undercurrents surge across all 7 kingdoms. Tarth, meanwhile, holds onto its peaceful, separated stillness. The island stands apart from the mainland, and their father keeps Brienne and Gallant in seclusion. As the world quietly gathers itself for war, Gallant tracks the political weather, but only enough to know which way the plot is turning. His real energy goes into self-improvement. The toothbrush and toothpaste business has made the Evenstar steadily wealthier over these years, and their father has become incredibly generous. With funding Gallant's elite training, the Lord has cultivated strong relationships with high-ranking nobles in Tyrosh, Pentos, and Lies, secretly purchasing serious criminals and death row prisoners for Gallant to judge in Tarth's dungeon. From last year on, his father even reached into Slavers Bay, Yunkai, Astapor, and Meereen. To buy more prisoners, he has poured these immense resources into Gallant, who has judged so many that he no longer remembers the minor sins, only the worst ones. In the godswood behind the castle, Gallant is performing his daily training. Sir Godwin does not spar with him anymore. Since last year, the knight declared him graduated. Because in actual combat and in swordsmanship, Gallant has simply surpassed his master, and there is nothing left to teach, so Gallant trains alone on his own regimen. Today he is shirtless in black linen trousers, belted with a narrow leather strap, doing push-ups with a millstone-sized log across his back. 318. 319. Sweat drips from his chin onto the grass. At 14, his body is approaching its fully mature shape. He is almost 1.88 meters, with clean muscle lines, not bulky but packed with sculpted, explosive power, doing over 300 push-ups while carrying a log near 40 caddies is the kind of feat ordinary knights of the Stormlands cannot match. 350. Done. He rolls the log off his back, sitting on the grass and breathing. His features have fully matured over 4 years. His jet black hair is slightly curly and cut short, the strands damp at the tips. His eyes are a deep clear blue with a faint circle of pale gray around the pupils. His nose is straight, his skin fair, and his lips thin and rosy, coupled with his muscle definition that women apparently cannot stop looking at. He has, in the words of his old life, the air of a young Keanu Reeves. He grabs a towel, wipes his face, and pulls up the panel. Gallant Tarth, title none, strength 18.73, agility 18.11, spirit 19.14, mana 0, swordsmanship 62%, archery 69%, riding 48%, common tongue 69%, swimming 72%, Valyrian 6, bloodlines, Evenstar 9%. 1% Terran, 1% Storm King, gold maxed Oathkeeper, and a single judgment point. Strength gained 0.01 since morning, bringing a faint smile to his face. Staring at the system panel after 4 years of relentless work, he cannot help but feel a bit spoiled. His current statistics would easily crush every single knight on Tarth. A normal adult man's strength and agility sit around 1.0, a well-trained knight's strength is around 1.5, with agility around 1.4, his own. Stats in both are over 18, which by the system's framing means 18 times the average baseline. The baseline strength, when sparring with Tarth's vassals and visiting Hedge knights, only Sir Godwin and a couple of highly skilled fighters have ever pushed him hard, and even they barely did. Hedge knights average 10 to 30% in swordsmanship. Well-trained knights reach 40, and masters like Sir Godwin hit 55. Yet he sits at 62%, top tier even in the Seven Kingdoms. Crucially, his spirit at 19.14 means his insight, speed of thought, adaptability, and neural reaction speeds all sit at nearly double a normal man's. Combined with high strength, agility, and technique, it produces a massive synergy where 1 + 1 is far greater than 2. He could now easily defeat Jaime Lannister, who is a year older, and even Robert in a rematch. He would definitely win a fair spar. Legendary fighters like Barristan or Arthur Dane would still beat him, but in a life-and-death duel with Oathkeeper drawn, he wins. The Holy Sword's edge completely collapses any armor advantage they have. His rapid growth completely outpaced his expectations, mostly thanks to his father. Without Selwyn's network in Essos, he could not have judged so many. Roughly 70 or 80 death row inmates from Tarth, and nearly 200 from Essos. In 4 years, it took those numbers to push his base attributes near 2.0. Not even counting the natural physical growth that comes with adolescence. His bloodline column shows another little surprise. The blood of the Evenstar has crept from 8 to 9% without him adding any single point. Natural growth, his innate Evenstar talent must be exceptionally high. The blood of the Evenstar is a legendary Tarth bloodline. He does not yet know its full effects, but his rapid physical development is plainly tied to it. He is 14 and nearly 1.8, expecting to hit 1.9 by 16. The bloodline carries Traits like great height and a strong constitution, the rest will reveal itself as the percentage climbs. He closes the panel as a cheerful voice rings out from beyond the trees, calling out that their father and Meister Armin sent her to find him. He looks up to see Brienne running toward him with a beaming smile. At 10, she is already nearly 1.65 meters tall and broad-shouldered. Her features are slightly neutral, lacking the soft sweetness of a typical girl's face. But she is far from ugly. He has made her keep her hair long and tied in a ponytail, so even when her face is plain, her shape never crosses into tomboy territory. Over the years, he has given exceptionally great attention to her oral health and dental growth, so unlike the original Brienne, her teeth have come in cleanly. Not exceptionally white or perfectly straight, still well within normal. Her skin is not rough either. He has the maids and old nannies attend to her with the same skin care used for the household, and despite the scorching sun and constant salty sea sweat, her cheeks remain incredibly delicate. She is naturally fair-skinned, with her platinum blonde hair and brows catching the light, and her clear blue. Her platinum blonde hair and brows catch the afternoon light, beautifully highlighting her clear blue eyes. Her eyes give her smile a contagious quality. She no longer throws herself at him the way she did when she was small. She is a young lady now, but she still jogs over without losing her breath, calling out that Meister Armin and father are looking for him. Meister Armin in recent years has not had quite the energy he once did, and their schedules have differed. His study time with him is now 8 to 9:30 in the morning. Afterward, he follows to learn estate management, touring the towns of Tarth, learning how taxes and docks are run, how to handle weather disasters, and how to mediate disputes between the small folk. In the afternoon, he does his own training. In the evening, he chooses between more training, more study, or rest, depending on his mood. Brienne's day is more regular. Study with Meister Armin in the morning, night training with Sir Godwin in the afternoon. Their father had originally hoped she would be raised as a lady with needlework and flower arrangements, but Brienne's talent in those areas was even worse than Arya's from the stories. She wanted swords. She wanted to be a knight like her brother. Father resisted at first because he felt that was no path for a noble girl, but he could not hold out against her stubbornness, combined with his brother's advocacy, and after the near drowning that changed his life. Their father has been more flexible about what matters, as long as the children grow healthy and as long as his son is doing well. He reasons he does not need to be strict with Brienne, and if she enjoys swordsmanship, she may practice for fun. Then, as she practiced, the reports from Sir Godwin began to surprise him. Brienne's talent, while less than her brother's, far exceeds that of a normal boy. Her future strength might surpass his own. Father heard this and went a little dazed, even slightly headache-ridden, because he started to fear she would never find a husband. By that point, of course, Brienne was already swinging a greatsword with formidable power, and there was no putting her back into needlework. With her brother's protection added, Father gritted his teeth and accepted it. Sometimes, watching her natural gifts, he sighs and says that it is a pity she was not born a boy, since a girl, no matter how strong, has trouble shining in a knighthood entirely controlled by men. Her brother sees it differently. With his help and guidance, Brienne's future achievements will surpass even her peak in the original timeline. What is wrong with being a woman? As long as she defeats every man who refuses to be convinced, Brienne will be the strongest female knight in Westeros. He tells her this often, and she smiles every time as if her eyes are catching something far ahead. What do Father and Meister Armin want? He asks, pulling on a linen shirt and ruffling Brienne's hair. She answers that she does not know, only that they were both frowning. Both of them frowning, that suggests something serious. They hurry back to Evenfall Hall. Father is sitting in the great hall waiting. After he dismisses Brienne, he tells his son directly that the Lord of Riverrun, Hoster Tully, has written to say that to celebrate the birth of his daughter, he will hold a tournament at Harrenhal. inviting the knights and nobles of the 7 kingdoms to attend. The tournament at Harrenhal, the young man's eyes narrow at once. After the first jolt of recognition, excitement and nervousness rise. Together, after waiting so long, this day has arrived, the tournament at Harrenhal. This grand tournament stands as the most critical event in Westeros history. The devastating war, the fall of House Targaryen, and total chaos start here. Nothing is simple. His father explains the massive plot brewing in the shadows. He reveals that this legendary event is actually being funded by someone else. That hidden mastermind is none other than Lord Tywin Lannister. This sudden revelation catches the young lord completely off guard. His father asks if he knows the size of the grand prize. 60,000 gold dragons, the old man says with a calm look. He asks if that is the total reward or just for the jousting tournament. Just the joust, the melee champion receives 40,000 gold dragons. With archery getting 20,000, that makes a staggering 120,000 total. It easily dwarfs the future 20,000 dragons Robert will offer at King's Landing. That future event is meant to celebrate Ned Stark becoming the Hand. Food, wine, and lodging will multiply that amount. House Tully cannot afford this. Whoever is secretly bankrolling this grand event must have some incredibly deep pockets. Only a select few great houses in the 7 kingdoms could ever dream of paying. So why point the finger at Lord Tywin Lannister, the young lord asks his father. Because this tourney brings together all the major lords, the father replies. Lord Leighton warns that Tywin wants to discuss deposing the king with them. So the old man got this vital intelligence straight from Old Town. House Hightower runs the absolute widest spy network in Westeros. It might not be as sharp as Varys, but it spans everywhere. Since the Citadel is there, every single Maester leaks secrets to them. His father smiles, advising him to simply follow their liege lord. The young lord smiles too. The bird that sticks its neck out gets shot. They will not pick sides just yet, but he warns that things will not be that simple. When his father asks why, the son points out a massive danger. This gathering represents all 7 kingdoms, but what if the king shows up? What if King Aerys decides to attend the grand tourney in person? His father frowns, wondering if the paranoid king already suspects the plot. The young lord nods. Right now, the king fears Tywin above all. Since the crown now has the Master of Whispers, Varys, at its side. And trust me, those deadly little birds do not miss a single whisper. Once the king finds out the truth, he will surely strike back. The old man nods, agreeing that the Mad King has grown incredibly ruthless. His fiery executions are always aimed directly at his actual political enemies. The father changes his mind, wanting to stay far away from this tournament. The old lord fears the unpredictable king might burn anyone on a sudden whim. He absolutely does not want his son anywhere near the Mad King's sight. But the young lord simply shakes his head, telling his father there is no need to worry. If the king acts like a tyrant there, it plays into Tywin's hands. His father thinks it over and realizes the brilliant logic behind it. With the entire nobility gathered, any open violence from the king triggers a revolt. Tywin can easily unite the lords, depose Aerys, and crown Rhaegar. Besides, with his own immense martial strength, the young lord has nothing to fear. Gallant knows he can easily protect himself at the Harrenhal tourney. His stats are just below legends like Barristan and Arthur Dayne in a spar. But with his sword Oathkeeper in hand, even those absolute monsters could be killed. In a crowded, chaotic place like Harrenhal, he can slip away from any danger. His father smiles, asking if he really wants to go, and Gallant says yes. He cannot miss the tourney, and he wants to meet up with Helena there. For the past few years, Gallant has been fully focused on his cultivation. He only visited Old Town once with his father and has not seen her since. They only kept in touch through ravens, and he wants to see her now. He is 14 and she is 15, 2 years since they last met face to face. Their letters have only deepened his fondness for her calm, gentle nature. She loves plants and rare books, which fits perfectly with Gallant's knowledge as a transmigrator. Their letters flowed easily because of his vast world knowledge. He really wants to see her in person, and besides, Harrenhal is key. It will feature one of the most iconic events in the entire story. The exact moment Rhaegar crowns Lyanna Stark as the Queen of Love and Beauty. He definitely does not want to miss that drama. His father finally agrees. He will arrange skilled guards to accompany him, but Brienne must stay behind. Gallant can escape danger easily, but taking his sister would only add risk. He thinks it over and nods. Brienne will be heartbroken, but it is necessary. His father suddenly mentions the snake vine flowers have finally arrived. Gallant is pleasantly surprised to hear they are already on the island. Those exotic snake vine flowers have a very famous name back on Earth. They are hops, a rare plant that only grows in the hills of Norvos. The vines climb frames like snakes, with flowers shaped like scaly mulberries. It got its local name from those scale-like petals, which Helena once mentioned. He recognized them instantly after reading about them in an Old Town botanical book. So he immediately had his father order a massive batch of them. He knows Westeros currently lacks any authentic, high-quality beer. The potential profits from this venture are going to be absolutely massive. When his father asks what makes it so special, Gallant just smiles. He explains that Helena suggested using it for brewing, and he wants to test it. But in his mind, he is already drawing up the entire production line. He is planning alliances with local towns and keeping the secret recipe safe. Soon, House Tarth could build a massive fleet just from selling this beer. The legendary tourney is just one stage, and this brewery is another. Every calculated step he takes is finally starting to pay off big time. Now look at that majestic horse. Thunder Smoke is a fine name. Gallant reaches out to gently stroke the beautiful stallion on its forehead. The smoke-gray beast senses his warmth and nuzzles right into his hand. It is surprisingly gentle for a warhorse known to be temperamental. Gallant circles the stallion twice, growing even fonder of him by the second. That rare smoky gray coat is absolutely stunning, sleek, and highly sophisticated. Back on Earth, this stallion would easily be a silver-gray supercar. His father smiles and hands the reins over, declaring the horse officially his. He swings up in one smooth motion, finding the saddle already perfectly fitted, and the moment he is on his back, he can feel the difference. Thunder Smoke's shoulder. Height is noticeably greater than any horse he has ridden before, and from up. Here his field of view widens, his balance steadies, and the powerful musculature beneath the saddle flexes with a ready, contained energy. He tugs the reins gently, and the stallion understands at once, breaking into a brisk trot that quickly becomes a canter. He adjusts the rhythm of his gait to him, softening the jostle, picking his lines through the grass, as if he has read his intentions in advance. None of the horses back at Fall Hall stables have ever offered an experience like this. No wonder the Dothraki value their horses more than their wives. Women are plentiful, but a treasure like this is exceedingly rare. When he reins him back to father, he is still reluctant to dismount. Father, how many gold dragons did this horse cost? 20, father says calmly, and he almost laughs in disbelief. An ordinary travel horse is a few dozen silver stags. Wartime horse is 1 or 2 gold dragons. A trained, high-quality warhorse is 5 to 10. Even a noble's mount rarely climbs above 10 gold dragons. Thunder Smoke at 20 is outrageous, the kind of price ordinary nobles will not pay. No matter how deep their coffers, yet thinking it through, 20 is fair. He is top tier. He comes from the Dothraki, who almost never sell their best horses, and the shipping alone from the Dothraki Sea to Tarth crosses more than 1,000 miles of sea. Father waves him down. There are still 2 days before they leave. For Harrenhal, plenty of time to bond with Thunder Smoke later, and there is something else for him. He dismounts. 2 young attendants father brought with Them step forward bearing a large wooden tray. He had been so taken with the horse he never noticed them. He lifts the black covering cloth and a set of deep gray plate armor with a metallic sheen comes into view. The metal carries faint flowing patterns like ripples on water, the surface catching the light with a low, understated nobility. The helmet design is simple and practical. No flourishes, only a slight raised arc at the brow for protection without sacrificing balance, the whole shape sturdy yet elegant. He lifts his eyes to Father, surprised, and asks what it is forged from. Father smiles, saying Valyrian steel. Surely he recognizes it. He is stunned, almost protesting. This cannot be real Valyrian steel. No, Father shakes his head, explaining it is not real. The free cities, having seen Valyria's glory, have long pursued the goal of recreating Valyrian steel, and a master smith of Karth in his attempts produced this metal not as light or as strong as true Valyrian, but far better than common fine steel and resistant to rust. As he runs his fingers over the rippling pattern, he realizes where he has seen it before. This is essentially Damascus steel. In his old life, his classmates were always dragging him to forging contests after school. He knows these patterns by heart and knows Damascus' signature trait of rust resistance. Father holds up 2 fingers. Again, 20 gold dragons, surprisingly affordable for such craftsmanship. Father smiles wider, calling it practically a gift. The toothbrushes and toothpaste have grown popular among the caring nobility, and to lock in long-term trade they all but pressed this armor on them, a gift still costing 20 gold. Dragons, he smirks, soap margins here are absolutely insane. Essos is extraordinary. Examining those patterns, a bold idea strikes. Could he replicate Damascus steel? He knows nothing about blacksmithing. But he watched tons of steel forging videos in his past life, so perhaps it is possible. With some guidance, a skilled smith might stumble onto the technique. Tarth even has its own iron mine. Harnessing this steel would elevate them. But with the tourney fast approaching, time is tight. He will start the experiments after he returns. The 2 attendants carefully help him into the protective undermail before starting on the heavy steel. Then layering on the steel plate, breastplate, pauldrons, and vambraces. They secure the helm, finally fastening a gray-blue cloak across his shoulders. His fit is absolutely perfect, and standing nearly 6 feet tall, the armor sits cleanly on his frame, while the cloak dramatically elevates his silhouette. Combined with the cold authority built from his years of carrying out executions, they cannot look at him without holding their breaths. Gallant of Morn reborn, that is the striking impression crossing their faces. His father stands watching him with a quiet flush of pride, clearly thinking that the boy has quietly grown into a powerful man, and that among the younger generation of the 7 kingdoms, Gallant has become the absolute standout in terms of ability. Intellect, appearance, and bearing, House Hightor is getting quite a bargain. His father quickly dismisses the fleeting thought. Helena is excellent. Excellent in her own right. Gallant moves around in the heavy armor, finding it surprisingly comfortable, though he regrets that the legendary sword Oathkeeper is not at his hip right now. Because with Thundersmoke beneath him, Oathkeeper at his side, and this rippling, deep gray plate, he would surely carry the unmistakable dominant air of an endgame boss. Waiting at the edge of a hunting wood, his father commands them to serve Gallant as his personal attendants, and both of them bow deeply, their young faces lit with pride. To serve as a personal attendant is indeed a clear, direct path of social climbing. Donning heavy plate armor is always complicated, and a knight always requires squires. At just 14 years old, Gallant is still too young to be knighted. Instead, he is given 2 young squires in training, hand-picked by his father from clean, modest families with sharp wits. The thin, freckled, brown-haired boy looks oddly familiar. His father reminds him that this is the old blacksmith's son, the boy who first pointed toward where Oathkeeper lay 6 years ago. The boy bows and speaks proudly, saying he is called Peak now, such a simple name, until Recently, he did not even have one. Gallant nods at him with a warm smile, if he is loyal and clever, Gallant will not begrudge him a bright future. He turns to the other, the chestnut-haired boy with regular features, asking for his name. Harrison, young master, he answers, but with a faint fervor in his eyes. Gallant asks if his father is a hunter, surprising both Harrison and his father. The startled boy asks how he knew, and Gallant simply says he guessed. But in truth, his mature 19-year-old spirit can easily read the perpetual readiness in his bones and muscle, a posture only held by men who lived in the wild long enough to be hunted by wild beasts. After exchanging a few more words, he gets his armor. He sends his father back to the castle, remaining in the godswood with Thundersmoke. Standing alone, he refuses to let these gifts consume him, as today's training is not finished. He is not done yet. He refuses to skip training just for a new horse and armor, one day off. Seems harmless, but the moment you slack off is when your discipline starts crumbling, threatening every useful habit built during his past life, and his 6 years in Westeros have run on a single rule: make plans in advance. Complete them without wavering. That was how a poor boy in his past life secured a prestigious university spot despite his circumstances, and it is how a transmigrator will win a kingdom in this one. He does not reject pleasure, but he never lets pleasure control him. He finishes his full training set, wipes down, and feeds Thundersmoke a handful of grass before finally mounting the beast to ride out to Sapphire Bay to gallop. Riding a horse on the open beach is a special pleasure, with flat, wet sand under the hooves to cushion the impact. The sea breeze cools his face as the orange tide rolls beside them. He lets Thundersmoke open up to full speed, and honestly, the sheer power is absolutely unreal. At full gallop, he is fast as a thunderbolt, and his hooves hitting the sand thrum like rolling thunder, while his coat and mane stream behind him like running smoke. Later, he takes Brienne up for a gentle ride and brings them back. Over the next 2 days, he spends nearly all his free hours getting Thundersmoke familiar with him. The legendary pet line on his panel does not light up, meaning the beast does not meet the system threshold for a legendary creature. It is a small regret. A direwolf might count, and dragons certainly do. But Thundersmoke is merely at the peak of mortal beasts, if only the system allowed point investments. Useful as he is, he cannot grow stronger than what he already is. By the 5th day, he brings his father to a separate tower in the Evenfall complex that has been cleared out by Stuart Claude's servants and given to Old Bear as a brewery. Gallant, can you really brew wine in such a short time? His father asks, dragged along by his son, invisibly skeptical. He does not bother answering with words. Instead, he has Old Bear bring out the wooden cask of beer resting in the cool chamber. By now, Old Bear's expression is no longer dubious. Over the past few days, he has been smelling the air hole of the cask, noting that the aroma has steadily strengthened, with no cloying sweetness or weird off flavors typical of local ale. The malt aroma is rich and pure, with a faint floral and bitter undercurrent the brewer has never produced before. He has been quietly anticipating this very moment. Gallant leans over and inhales deeply near the hole, and the rich malt aroma fills his nose, far stronger than anything he remembers from industrial beer in his past life. The malt-to-water ratio here is completely handmade, with absolutely no shortcuts. The aroma is authentic, and the fermentation has gone perfectly. Ideally, they would let it sit another week, but he leaves for Harrenhal tomorrow, so they must open it now. He pries the lid off, letting the aroma roll out into the room. His father and Stuart Claude both blink in complete surprise. Not only has the brewing succeeded, but the smell is striking. They are familiar with ale, but local ale carries a cloying sweetness and cloudy harshness that completely masks the malt. This barrel smells clean, even fresh, and almost refreshing. Inside the cask is a clear, pale golden liquid, with a soft white foam forming at the rim and a thin layer of sediment at the bottom. In clarity alone, it is already a higher tier than any ale they have ever witnessed. Old Bear hands him a ladle, and he scoops a small. He sips, it tastes wonderful, richer than the draft beers of his old life, with a stronger floral and herbaceous note from the hops. Only the carbonation is missing because he does not yet have any way to introduce carbon dioxide. But that does not matter. This already surpasses any ale on Westeros. In flavor, it can no longer be called ale. This is beer. Old Bafer rubs his hands behind him, dying to taste it. He hands a second ladle to Father, who lifts it and takes a sip, and his eyes go round. The malt and the wine and the floral notes bloom on his palate, and the aftertaste of sweetness and malt rises from his stomach back through his throat. He swallows and stares. Even Father, who has tasted many fine wines, has to admit this has a unique flavor. He looks at Gallant, his heartbeat audibly stepping up, suddenly understanding why. He dragged him over. Old Bear finally cannot wait any longer, and Stuart Claude waves him on. He scoops, inhales, sips, closes his eyes, and gives a slow, appreciative shake of his head. Young Master Gallant, you are truly remarkable. He says, I never imagined ale could be brewed to such a flavor. I have wasted my whole life on ordinary brewing.